welcome into the Tuesday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth back with you here on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. We got a lot to get to today here on the show, continuing the Julio hoopla that we did yesterday. Back at it again here today, taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Fellas, how we doing? What's going on, Joe Rexrode?
No one cares how I'm doing. I want to hear how Ryan Porth's doing.
Doing fantastic ever since about 11 a.m. on Sunday.
I bet so.
What? Well, you're also coming off a wedding and a honeymoon. That should also be
More importantly, the Titans have Julio Jones, Joe.
Well, you're also on your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Sounded like it was
All
kind of
good
fun
things.
in Florida.
Everything great happened at once.
There you go.
And the Reds swept the Cardinals in a 4-game series. I mean, life is just dandy right now.
Wow.
Fourth, we last Tuesday recapped your wonderful wedding weekend. It was a fun time.
It was a great
Did
time.
you enjoy yourself at your wedding? How was St. Augustine, your trip with the missus? How's life been the last week or so?
The wedding was exactly what we wanted it to be 11 months ago when we initially had it all scheduled. And the honeymoon was fantastic. Some time on the beach, some time in the little quaint downtown area, if you want to call it that, of St. Augustine. Went on a haunted pub tour.
Oh,
so I thought Joe would get some appreciation out of that.
Yeah, those are good.
Basically, some older gentlemen telling ghost stories of these different bars around St. Augustine.
Hey, we had our ghost stories here on the show, too.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
That's right.
Elijah?
Yeah.
People just turn his Xbox on all the time. Lots of ghost stories here lately. Well, welcome back, Porth. It's good to have you back.
Great to be back.
It was a great wedding, and, Katie Rexrode still talks about, is there any way I can get, a few hours where I'm sitting right next to Jared Stillman again? She misses him.
Yeah. Wants to get back in that scenario right now.
She enjoyed it very much.
I'm sure she did.
She did. So, Porth, your thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans? Here we were sitting here on Sunday. I got out of church. All of a sudden, it was all breaking loose on Twitter. Julio Jones becomes official on Sunday. We've been talking about it for weeks, the possibility of it. Now that it's happened, your reaction as a Titans fan to Julio Jones, I guess we're going to operate under the assumption that he's going to be number 8. Number 8.
Sure.
Coming to the Titans.
Number 8 in your program, but number 1 in your hearts.
That's right.
That is official?
It's not official. I'm operating under the assumption.
You're just okay. That's today, right? We find this out.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. We'll find
Are they
out
going to
today.
have some big reveal?
Probably.
Is Marcus going to hand him the jersey?
Pass the baton.
Yes. Anyway, Porth, your thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans.
Raise the banner.
Yeah.
Raise the banner. They're going to win a Super Bowl.
I like it.
Okay.
Porth's fired up.
I don't know if I'll go that far, but I am stoked. Whenever I think about the trade, a smile just comes across my face. I'm so happy as a Titans fan. I mean, you guys talked about it yesterday. How long have we wanted to see the Titans get at least just one good receiver? Forever. Ever since Derek Mason. And now they have 2 bona fide number 1 receivers. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday, too, when we got done with the show. Think about the receivers they've gone through here. And at times, who the number 1 receivers have been. No disrespect to Rashad Matthews, but Rashad Matthews at one point was the number 1 receiver here.
For a good team with a pretty good offense.
Good team with a pretty good offense.
Justin Gage was the number 1
Gage,
receiver on a 13-3 team in 08.
Yeah. It's just amazing to think about the teams that have come in and out of here, and they've had some really good teams, and we had some texters point this out yesterday. It feels like they've always been pretty good, pretty loaded at tight end. Whether you want to go back to Frank Wycheck or obviously with Delaney here as well. They've always been able to find a way to make the tight end position work for the most part. They've had such a hard time at finding wide receivers. And now, just and I heard all kinds of national people talking about this yesterday too. The idea of A.J. Brown on the left, Julio Jones on the right, Derrick Henry in the backfield. It's incredible to think about as a Titans fan, the star power that you've now got on this offense. And we'll see whether or not it could fully translate and people could stay healthy and all that. But this is, I think you said it yesterday, on paper, probably the most dangerous by far a Titans offense has ever been, maybe in the history of this franchise, when you throw the Oilers in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, every team has there's somebody on every team that's like, well, if they stay healthy, right?
Sure.
I mean, and really, that's just like we had Michael Lombardi wrote a thing for us at The Athletic, and it was like, if, and it's like, well, that's true, but you really could do that for every team, couldn't you?
Yes.
No, I understand. Julio,
If Patrick Mahomes stays healthy.
yeah, I mean, he had an injury last year.
Yep.
But look, if they're lining up like that, I don't think there's any doubt about it. Go back all through the Oilers. I mean, I love those Oilers teams with Warren Moon in the late 80s. They had some good receivers. They were okay at running back. They didn't have like a star running back. They were very good. The scheme, was kind of ahead of its time a little bit, but I don't think there's any doubt about it. I'm trying to think, and I've been trying to think of similar trios like this in general in the NFL. Actually, I did come up with one, which you guys will be very excited about. The Detroit Lions of the mid-'90s had Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, both 1,000-yard receivers, and then, of course, Barry Sanders in the backfield. And they were great with Scott Mitchell throwing to them.
Yeah.
And Scott Mitchell was not very good, but that team
A mighty team that will not yield.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, that tells you how good those guys were, because they played for that franchise and they still were like winning the division, and they should have made runs. But I can't think of many, two receiver. There's a million, great receiver, great back combos, great two receiver combos. Alvin Harper,
I'll give you
Michael Irvin, and Emmett but Alvin Harper was kind of, he was deep threat. Go ahead.
Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, and Marshall Falk.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, for sure. And that was, of course, I think the difference with them is also schematically that was a little bit of ahead of its time. And, I mean, Kurt Warner, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, there is that.
But, yeah, that's a good – now, I would argue that just the three, this is better if Julio Jones is Julio Jones.
Sure.
But that's what that's the assumption we're operating under, right? I mean,
until proven otherwise.
yeah. I mean, again, if he's what he was last year when he played, okay, so that's the Julio Jones we're talking about. You tell me. I think that these three are better than those three. Maybe not better at quarterback, maybe not schematically, but those three are better than these three. Or these three are better than those three. Yes?
I think it's close. I mean, look, Marshall Falk and Derrick Henry are just so different, right?
Yeah, totally different.
They're totally different players. So, I mean, I guess you could go either way on that one, but it's close. Look, if you're in that conversation,
You're doing
pretty
something
good
right.
spot. I mean, that's a pretty good place to be if you're the Titans at this point, and you're comparing yourselves to the greatest show on turf, basically, with the talent you're throwing out there.
Well, it's so different, too, because, again, at Marshall Falk, I mean, they were so hard to deal with because he was so good coming on the backfield,
Yep.
right? But you have these two guys and the battering ram. So it's so much more of a are those safeties high or not?
Right,
It's just
from a defensive standpoint, schematically, I think it's harder to prepare for this three with the Titans, because even with Marshall Falk, like, you weren't scared of Marshall Falk like running through you. You're scared of Derrick Henry running right over the top of you. So are you going 8 in the box and leaving you single coverage on the outside? Are you going 6 in the box to try to combat Julio and AJ and leaving Derrick Henry right up the middle? Like, and we talked about it yesterday. This is a tough place to be schematically if you're a defense trying to defend against this offense. And look, we're going to talk a lot about the defense. I know that was very popular yesterday. Well, we still have to see what the defense looks like, and that's fine. But you've put yourself offensively in a position where you should theoretically be in every game. Like, there's no reason this offense should not be every bit as good as they were last year. And you could argue with Julio Jones coming in there, you should be better than you were last year, which is a high bar, I know. But that's why you make a move like this, is to have that bar set where it is.
right. And it's also, I think, schematically, but just think about wear and tear on a defense. I mean, it's already, and that was already probably tougher with the two guys who were here already.
Yeah.
In terms of just tackling them, but Julio's no walk in the park either. So, yeah, it's. I mean, look, I usually get to about late July, and it's like, all right, training camp. see what the new rookie looks like or whatever. But this is like, man, I can't wait to watch these practices.
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday. This is going to be, I think, by far the most anticipated training camp the Titans have ever had. Just based on, number one, I actually kind of miss preseason football last year. We didn't get to see it much. Now, I'm sure by the time the first game rolls around, I'll be like, okay, I didn't miss preseason football all that much. But with Julio Jones coming in and what this offense could look like, you're going to see, I think, some really excited Tennessee Titans fans this year once training camp rolls around.
That's a bold statement, though. The most anticipated What about what about the training camp after they made the Super Bowl? But I guess that's the thing. But you knew what the team was.
Yeah.
Like you're excited for the season.
Sure.
But you weren't unwrapping something.
Exactly. Like just in.
Maybe like Vince Young's first camp.
Maybe
Mariota's first camp. Locker's first camp. I don't know. I mean, I guess like the new first round high pick quarterback's first camp might be. Yeah.
I probably put Vince Young ahead of the other two, but yeah.
Yeah.
People were fired up about Vince Young.
I mean, that's
the last thing they saw of Vince Young was that USC game, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, we're getting the best football player of all time coming here."
Right. So it's probably
up there.
That's probably right there. But this is going to be interesting, and there's so many new guys on the other side, which is for people who are pointing that out. I mean, I agree. I mean, they have to be that those defensive moves have to work for this to be for Porth to be hanging the banner, But we'll get to see them try to deal with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown in camp.
That's right. So we're off and running here today on Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts on Julio Jones on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. When we come back, where does this trio of Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Julio Jones rank in the NFL with the weapons that are out there and are available? We'll talk about that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
there have been times where we've been smitten with the concept of triplets, but some teams, whether it be the Colts with Peyton Manning, the greatest show-offs on turf, it's not just quarterback, running back, receiver, it's quarterback, running back, two great receivers.
Exactly.
And now the Titans enter that group, and it doesn't happen very often.
No.
Where everything lines up just right, where you have great quarterback, great running back, great receivers, two of them. You got four guys that can create havoc, and it's going to be pick your poison. Every time we see that, it becomes a pick your poison proposition.
That was Mike Florio and Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk discussing the Titans offense, what they've now constructed with Julio Jones in the fold, the trio of Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Julio Jones. And, Joe, it's interesting there. You're comparing it to some pretty great offenses of the past with Peyton Manning and the Colts, with Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Edgerrin James as a part of that mix as well. We talked about the Rams in the last segment with Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, and Marshall Faulk. You start getting into that territory, that's a pretty high bar as an offense, but that's where the Titans have put themselves with A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, and Julio Jones now in the mix. That's one thing to look at the past and talk about, the trios that we've seen in NFL history. Where does this trio right now stack up in today's NFL when it comes to weapons around the league? Do the Titans clearly have the best trio when it comes to Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry as weapons for quarterbacks to get the ball to?
I mean, you go through the league and, there's obviously a ton of great duos. I'm still looking at New Orleans, Kamara, Thomas, and then throw whoever in there, if Michael Thomas is healthy. I mean, the Cowboys have Zeke, Amari Cooper, and friends. But it's hard to find. I mean, the only two trios that I would match up with this personally, I definitely look at the Browns, because if you have Beckham with Landry with Chubb, that's very good. And then you look at the Chiefs, and it's like, okay, I mean, I'm counting Kelsey in this as the other pass catcher with Tyreek Hill, and then Edwards-Helaire, whatever. I mean, whoever's at running back in that offense will be just fine, do well. But I think Edwards-Helaire is very good.
Yeah.
So those are the two teams where I look at a trio. I mean, I can't find any way. You tell me if I'm missing something here. I mean, there's a lot of teams where you find two. You find the back and the receiver, or you find two receivers. Those are the only two that come to mind with legit, all three spots where you scare defenses.
No, those were the two that came to mind for me as well. Like, you start looking around the rest of the league. I mean, let's think about the best teams from last year. The Bills. I mean, you've got Diggs, but they're trying to figure out things outside of that. John Brown's not there anymore. He's with the Raiders now. So
I mean, ATN is coming in.
ATN's coming in with So I mean, it's one of those.
Oh no, ATN's
he's with the Jags.
Yeah. Wait, who did the Bills? The Bills picked up a running back though. I got that mixed up.
It wasn't Najee Harris either, because he's in Pittsburgh. I have to think about it. But either way, it's not. I mean, the Bills don't have a trio like that at this point.
Right.
I mean, the Packers in the NFC title game last year, you've got Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, but there's not a third to go along with that. That's like the Titans have right now. I think
you're just going to diss your man Funyon like that.
I do like Robert Tonyan, but I would not put him in that.
Funyon.
Would not put him in that same category yet. This moment, maybe he'll do that at some point this year. But also see who's going to be throwing him the ball this year. See what happens.
Yeah, that might matter
on that front as well. But I think the Titans, I think it's clear. Like, if Julio Jones is Julio Jones, and as you said last segment, that's what we're operating under the assumption that he's going to be. I think the Titans clearly had the best trio because of how much stress it puts on the defense. And look, I know we talked about this yesterday with the national response to this too, but also you add Tannehill into the mix too, and that 4 it becomes pretty lethal at that point.
Well, but that's where you'll see dissent, right?
I agree.
That's where you'll see disagreement. Beyond the whole, like, how could you give up a second-round pick? You can't possibly imagine, like, dipping in 2023 or 2024. Like, how could you, But beyond that, the Tannehill discussion is where some people, and it really is kind of like it's a real test of, like, do you watch football or not?
A lot of the answer is no, apparently.
Yeah, apparently not.
Let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Steven on the text line says, I keep thinking of one of my favorite GM quotes in regards to trying to stop the pass or the run. Quote, do you want to drown in the Atlantic or drown in the Pacific? This coming from Steven. That certainly looks like what the Titans offense is presenting to opposing defenses on paper as we head into camp coming up here in a few weeks.
That was morbid, Steven. By the way, Bills didn't draft a running back, so never mind.
There you go.
I have no idea. Why did I think I guess maybe I just expected that they would, but they didn't. They did draft.
So they are not in this trio conversation.
Just like the Titans drafted a tight end.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Yeah. Did the Bills draft a tight end? No, they drafted a receiver, though.
Well, maybe they'll be in the trio with the new receiver. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, John. I mean, they're still. I mean, but seriously, on the contender front, I mean, I still consider the Bills.
Sure.
Because Diggs, I mean, he was one of the real breakout, great moves of last year, and he and Josh Allen have a great thing together. But is there enough around Josh Allen? Their defense, though, I think should be pretty good this year.
Yeah.
They're a pretty balanced team. They look like a more balanced team than the Titans, and of course they got Rousseau in the first round, and that guy could be really good.
So with that in mind, I mean, we talked about yesterday the kind of the tier of the league in the AFC, with Kansas City still being in the top spot. Is it just a two-team race for the kind of that second tier between the Titans and the Bills, in your opinion, or is there another team? You brought up the Browns and the trio that they could have with Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., Nick Chubb in the backfield as well. We know they spent some money on defense this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
As well, with our boy Jadeveon Clowney coming in there. Are they close to that mix as well? How do you kind of separate what we see right now in the AFC in terms of who are contenders and who are not in the AFC?
Yeah, I think the Browns could be right there. And I'm not saying that because they got Clowney. Although some of my Browns fans, friends, man, they're
fired up.
Calm down, guys. Calm down. It's Clowney. Maybe it'll work out for you. It's possible. They've got to be right there to me. And like I said, I mean, I might put yesterday I said like Titans, Bills, and this might be a daily thing that changes, and then those next three, which would be, Colts, Ravens, Browns. But I don't know, maybe Ravens and Colts would be a third tier for me, and I would have Browns, Bills, Titans on the second tier. By
the way, a lot of Colts fans still not convinced that the Julio Jones move from the Titans puts them over the top in Indy.
Well, that's what they should be.
Well, I know it's Colts fans, but a lot of national people I've seen still saying, "All right, well now the Titans are right there with the Colts," and I'm like, "Am I missing something here?" Maybe people just love Carson Wentz.
Some do. I mean, Carson Wentz has got to be one of the most disagreed upon players going into this year.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there are people who are like, "Oh yeah, that dude is going to be just like he was," and then there's some people like, "Have you watched him the last couple of years? Like he's not that guy anymore." That's going to be. I mean, look, if he is, then I still think we've got a heck of a race ahead of us, even with this addition for the Titans. But I think the truth is probably somewhere in between there. And if that's the case, to me, the Titans are the clear favorite. That's how I expect Carson Wentz to be somewhere in between the very polar opposites of what people expect from him. And if that's the case, I think the Titans should win the AFC South by a game or two.
Well, I just keep going back to who's he going to throw the ball to. I mean, and that's why I thought that Indy could really be a player here with Julio Jones, because you look at that offense, I think you look at the roster, and there are a lot of good things that you like about Indy and their roster, and even with the loss on the offensive line, you still feel good about the line. I mean, there's a lot of things to like about the Colts, but I keep going back to, who's Carson Wentz going to throw the ball to? That's that guy that just puts fear into the defense. I don't think they really have one. That's why I thought that they would maybe be a pretty serious player for Julio Jones, and for him to end up here and not in Indianapolis, number one, obviously, that's a massive win if you're the Titans. Not only to have him on your team, but to not have him in Indy, I thought for that reason, with the cap space they have as well, that Indianapolis could be a pretty logical destination for Julio Jones.
Yeah, well, I would have thought so too, but based on all the reporting on this, they weren't really in this.
Yeah.
I mean, you had like the whole NFC West was taking swings at this, and the Ravens, of course, were a team that was talked about quite a bit. But I never heard anything on the Colts. It's interesting. They have space too. So what does that tell you? I mean, look, Chris Ballard he's been very eager to dump out of the first round and to have a lot of cap space. Now, if I'm a Colts fan, at some point I'm like, are we going for it? I mean, that's
Yeah.
I would think that, but it is possible. You're right. They don't have anyone yet who has emerged as a great player, and obviously,
I mean, look, Pittman Jr. is good.
I think he's going to be good. Yes, I think Pittman has a chance to be very good. Paris Campbell. I mean, I think there's where some of that hope is that he can take a big step. So some of that may be just how they feel about some of those guys. They got. I tell you, the guy they got coming in, Tariq Black, I think is very talented. But it's a we'll see on that situation. But I'm a little surprised that they didn't get into this at all. And I mean, if I'm a Colts fan, I don't love how things have developed. I at least wanted him to go somewhere else rather than be in my division, and now us have to face him twice because it's just look, you can't, you don't want to overthink this every single week. And I think there's been a lot of this reaction the last couple of days. I mean, this is one of the worst weeks for DC next year just because, like, you don't see three guys like this very often in a given week.
No, you're exactly right. And that's why if I'm the Colts, I saw a lot of reaction from Colts fans on Sunday like, who cares? That Titans defense is still no good. Whatever. We'll stop Julio Jones and they'll still go win the division. Like, okay. We'll see what happens on that front. Joe from Maryland on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Those same Colts fans think that Carson Wentz is going to put them over the top. SMH. Shake my head.
Well, listen. I mean, the Carson Wentz thing will always make me think of Sweaty Jared, like acting like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to the Titans. And there's that. Now, I think there's a lot of Titans fans maybe a little bit too much that way.
Agreed.
But I have a hard time with anyone who thinks he's going to come in and be a Pro Bowler too. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I think he was a tremendous player a couple years ago, and there's so much issues that were around him in Philly. I don't know. That's just they've got to be maybe of all these so-called contenders the hardest one to pin down, right?
I would think so. A lot of it depends largely entirely on him and what version of Carson Wentz you're going to see once we get kicked off here in a few weeks with the Colts. When we come back, we'll introduce our poll question of the day surrounding the Tennessee Titans, the acquisition of Julio Jones. What does it mean for the big picture in the AFC? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Got a loaded show for you here today. We'll be joined by David Beauclair at 7 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans. Former NFL Falcons tight end Jacob Tamme joining the show at 8 o'clock. And then, as always, our weekly visit with Charles Robinson with Yahoo Sports at 9 o'clock. So a lot to get to on the Julio Jones front today. And speaking of Julio Jones, let's introduce our poll question of the day at 102.5 The Game on Twitter. And today's question is this. Following the Titans' acquisition of Julio Jones, do you believe that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game? Yes or no? Joe, we are very early in the voting process. So far, 68% say yes, they believe the Titans can beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game. 32% say no. And there have been some interesting responses so far. Coach Seth Luttrell pointing out, yes, if the first-round pick is as good as people expect he is, I think we'll be okay. And the upgrades we made defensively. And then some people say, the homers are back on this poll result so far, with 68% saying yes, the Titans can beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, yeah, Strauss says homers are back, LOL. I would say, like, if the question was will, that would be very homerish. But, I mean, look, like if you force me to vote in this poll, can? Sure. I mean, it's one game in the playoffs. Can they? Yeah. Would I pick them to? Probably not, because it's still Patty Mahomes on the other side there, and it's hard to expect to beat him.
Patrick, his family will get upset with you if you call him Patty.
Sorry. It's all those years of calling Patrick Waugh, Patty Roy.
Patty Roy.
That guy, the maestro on the other side. It's hard to expect it. I expect them to go to the Super Bowl. I expect the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl the next, 6 years in a row. Will they? Probably not. They'll probably get picked off a couple times in there. So, you ask me, can the Titans go win a playoff game in Kansas City? I mean, we're just assuming it'll be in Kansas City, right? Because they're going to go 15-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can. So I don't think these people are homers.
I don't think so either. I think, look, that's why you go make a move like this, right? To bring Julio Jones in, yes, they can. Now, to your point, I think it's going to take a lot of things that'll go right. I mean, you got to have Caleb Farley come in and be an impact right away. As we know, Caleb Farley not scared of Tyreek Hill. Made that very clear in his comments pre-draft with Chris Collinsworth. So he's not scared of Tyreek Hill. That's a good thing to have on your side.
Press him.
Going into Kansas City. Press him the whole time. But this is why you go make a move to get Julio Jones, and I think you brought this up yesterday, and I agree. I mean, no matter how good your defense is, unless it's Tampa Bay from last year and you're just overwhelming with your pass rush.
Well, against a banged-up
offensive line. I mean, it was a perfect storm last year, and, the mystical powers of Tom Brady, everything that goes along with that. You're going to have to score some points to beat Kansas City. Like, you're going to have to get into the 30s. To beat Kansas City, and this is what this offense is now designed to do. And we talked about it. Like, if you're a defense and you try to completely shut down Derrick Henry, I mean, it's obvious what teams have tried to do to varying degrees of success. It's been very rare that they've been able to do it. But Baltimore, to their credit last year in the playoffs, they were able to do it, and they shut down Derrick Henry, and the Titans didn't have much of an answer outside of that. I mean, A.J. Brown, he had his moments, and I think, Tannehill missed him on a play where he was wide open streaking down the sideline that maybe makes the difference in the game. But certainly the Titans, if you get into a game like that again, I think you're much more equipped to handle that this year with A.J. Brown on one side and with Julio Jones on the other and with Josh Reynolds wherever he's going to line up at this point. Like, I feel a ton better about the Titans being able to handle that if a team commits to trying to slow down Derrick Henry at this point. So, yeah, I think they absolutely can go in there and win. Again, it's going to take a lot of things to go right. But I think if you can get your defense to a point where it can just get you a couple of stops, this offense should be good enough to be right there with Kansas City.
Yeah, and I think it's worth bringing up every time we get into these things like last year to this year. A big thing that you have in these matchups, as long as things go well, is that you have one of maybe your most talented player non-skill back. That's why you pay him so much money. I mean, Taylor Lewan is not there last year. Change the offense. They still were very good. They figured it out. I mean, I think that's the most impressive thing about what Arthur Smith did last year is maintaining the production even after losing that. But if you go watch the Titans early in the year last year, I thought there were some incredible instances of drop-back situations where Tannehill just had all day. And, you can't give him that if you're a defense. And it was very different in the second half of the season. They had some stuff they couldn't do anymore. And of course, Jonnu Smith is one of those things that changed. But that's a big deal. And the offensive line, that's where you get a second-round pick here. If he works out, then, man, this offense has got a lot of things going for it.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Heidi from Dixon texting in saying, we already could, otherwise why play the game, but using the Joe Rexrode best of 10 rule, we win 3 out of 10 now against the Chiefs instead of just 1 time out of 10.
That's not bad. So before this, it was I don't know that I think before this I might have gone to 2.
Okay. What is it now? Is it 5?
It's not 5. No, it's definitely not 5. Is it 4? Is that going a little high?
Probably
a little high. So yeah, maybe. So that's, and if it's only going 2 to 3, how much of a needle mover is this? Maybe
that's what I was going to ask you.
Well, I'm going to go. I'm going back around to Jared. I'm with you, Jared. How dare John Robinson do this? You're fired. But that might be it. It's 1 or 2, and now it's. I'll say this to be wishy-washy: 1 or 2, up to 3 or 4, but probably more like 3, right? 3 out of 10.
What? Sure.
Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
It's not 5.
Okay.
I will be very strong on that. It's not 5.
Okay.
It's probably 3. Yeah, maybe 1 to 3. Maybe I'll just go back around to Heidi. You're right. I just never should have doubted you.
That was a lot of numbers just got thrown out there in that segment. I like it.
Whenever we can deal with math on this show. Also, it's Foo Fighters.
Yes, thank you. What a time. Ron on the text line. Go ahead.
Sorry. I mean, when you look back to the AFC Championship game, they couldn't breathe on Mahomes.
Yep.
So as much of a great thing it is that they got Julio in a game like that against the Chiefs, how many times can you put Mahomes on his butt? Can Dupree wreak havoc? Can Harold Landry get there? Can Autry get there? Simmons? If they can at least make life difficult for Mahomes on a couple of drives and maybe force an interception, then I feel a lot better about their chances in one game. And a lot of people are bringing up that, even with this trade that the Titans wouldn't beat KC, there's no guarantee that your road to a Super Bowl would have to go through KC. We see things all the time in the playoffs that are unexpected, that you might be on the opposite side of the bracket from the Chiefs, and then someone upsets them in the divisional round, and then all of a sudden you're hosting an AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, look, no one else in the AFC should feel like they're going to be like Kansas City should win the AFC still, okay? And I don't think there's anything that any of these teams could have done that's going to change that because of the guy at the most important position. But I think the Titans have moved up in the next tier. And, yeah, you're right. Look, it does bring me back to, the Clowney signing, because I remember writing it. It was like, remember that play where Mahomes, what if Clowney's on the field? Who knows? But to your point, they just paid Bud Dupree a ton of money to be that guy. So there's so much of the Titans' defense that's going to dictate how this all goes that we don't know. But I do feel like if this team had to get into a bunch of up and down 40-point type games, they can play however you want them to play now.
Yeah, you're equipped to do that. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Got some thoughts to get to on the text line as well. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Can you make the case for the Titans being number 2 in the AFC? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game.
The Tennessee Titans right now, because of this trade, with all due respect to Indianapolis, they are your clubhouse leaders to win this division. It's theirs to lose. They've got to get better on defense. That was part of their problem last year. They couldn't generate a pass rush. That was part of their problem last year. They got to work on that. But who in the hell is going to be able to cover both A.J. Brown and Julio Jones outside and then be prepared for the bowling ball that is number 22 coming downhill off of a 2,000-yard season?
That was Rich Eisen breaking down the Tennessee Titans and their offense now with Julio Jones in the mix. As he points out, who's going to be able to cover A.J. Brown and Julio Jones while also dealing with Derrick Henry? And is that enough to push the Titans over the top in the AFC? Joe, let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mark texting in. Guys, Jones does not make the Titans beat Kansas City. They need to win the division or wild card first. Jones does not give the Titans any extra wins at all.
Well, actually, Mark, they need to play their first preseason game first. So then they have to play
which is in Atlanta
next
by the way.
week. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean we're obviously talking, Mark, about a hypothetical game here. So
what do you think
we
about?
Don't. There is nothing on the schedule that says they're playing the Chiefs in the playoffs. What's that?
What do you think about Julio Jones not giving the Titans any extra wins at all?
I don't know. Maybe he cost them wins. You know, maybe anything's possible. A year from now, we may be sitting here like, gosh, just like Clowney, this Julio signing. No guarantees.
Can you imagine if the Julio signing doesn't work out and John Robinson goes and tries and signs another free agent? Be like, stop! Don't do it. Nope.
Not me.
You're not drafted in the first round. You're not drafted or getting any more free agents.
Keep taking shots, man.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Shoot or shoot.
That's right. I'm all for it.
You miss 100% of those you don't take. Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, I think it could make a 3-win difference. I mean, it fundamentally changes what they are offensively. From on offense, I still thought would maybe be very good, even with losing Davis and Jonnu Smith. Still, a lot to like about this offense before they got Julio Jones. To now, something that just really is rare in this game.
Yeah.
I keep going through. And I'm talking, Roger Craig, Jerry Rice, John Taylor. There's something that came to mind. Roger Craig was a very good running back. People never talk about him. He was very good. 1,500 yards in 88. Obviously, Jerry Rice, I think the best receiver ever.
Yeah.
John Taylor was good. Now, John Taylor was probably a guy who kind of benefited
from Jerry Rice.
That's the thing. It's hard to find instances of two guys like this with a back like that. Very hard.
Yeah.
So doesn't guarantee anything, but man, if you don't think that this could change their bottom line, I think you're underrating this.
So it was interesting because when Julio Jones, the trade was announced, the Super Bowl odds for the Titans moved pretty heavily. And I heard Chase McCabe talking about this yesterday on Darren Donick and Chase as well. I think on BetMGM, they went from plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl, so 40-1 odds, to plus 2,500. I mean, that's a pretty massive jump in terms of Super Bowl odds for the Titans with Julio Jones coming in there. Now, the interesting thing, as Chase pointed out yesterday, is in the division, I think they were plus 110. So the Colts were the favorite in the division. With Julio Jones, they moved to plus 105. So not much movement there.
In the FanDuel Sportsbook right now, it's a toss-up between the Colts and the Titans, both at plus 110.
Yeah.
And the Colts were only a slight favorite before the trade.
Yeah.
I was very surprised to not see the Titans, because that could be the overreaction. Everyone puts money on the Titans, and then they become the favorite.
Sure.
Very surprised to see the Titans not be the odds-on favorite right now.
Well, especially when the Super Bowl odds changed so dramatically with that one move.
So Vegas thinks maybe in the regular season they muddle around a little bit. When they get to the playoffs, they
turn it on.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. And obviously, Vegas, these odds are always, you're trying to get betting on both sides of something, right? So that's always worth keeping in mind in this stuff. But yeah, I would have expected a little bit more of a jump on the division front there.
People love the Indianapolis Colts, man. They do. That's what I've learned throughout this summer and this process so far. People love them some Colts.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, think
and
back
they're
even
a
to last
solid
year
football
with
team.
Phillip Rivers coming in and the poll at The Athletic. Like, how many people picked the Colts?
I was one of like 3 who picked the Titans.
Like, that may change now with Julio Jones because you got a star player coming in, and I imagine, like, when the media starts doing their preseason picks for the AFC South, I think with Julio coming in, you'll probably see a lot of love to the Titans. But people, they love voting for the Colts in these polls. It's something.
That actually brings up a good idea. I think I'll ask all of our NFL people. Maybe I'll just do my own little poll of them, or I guess I could wait and see how they vote, and just ask, like, would you, whoever voted for the Titans, were you going to vote for the Colts? I would be willing to bet that it was going to be very close to last year, which is like overwhelming Colts.
I agree.
And I would be willing to bet right now that more people will vote for the Titans than the Colts. That's my guess. But that they have to do a little investigation there.
Here's another.
I'll send some slacks out.
You should.
Here's another curious one. To be the number 1 seed in the AFC for the playoffs.
Yep.
Did you see this on FanDuel?
I did not.
Titans are plus 1,700. And they are behind the Colts, the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Chargers in those odds.
See,
You got to be thinking that they're getting Rodgers, right? If it's the Broncos.
But why would you have that? So that's the thing. I feel like some of these odds are like just no one. It's like you didn't sweep the floor in the last week. You know what I mean? Like, this haven't even like gotten to it yet.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't make sense.
Like 17-1.
Jump on that.
If the offense is dynamite,
jump on.
I
Pretty
mean,
good value, man.
I mean, the Colts.
Not telling you what to do.
The Colts, Broncos, and Dolphins are all, and Chargers. Colts, Broncos, Dolphins, Chargers are all 14-1, and the Titans are at 17-1.
That's wild.
That makes me nervous about Aaron Rodgers. Do they know something?
There you go. Vegas always knows. I mean, that's because
the Dolphins.
Yeah,
that one I don't get.
Well, but I get that more than the Broncos. I mean, I mean, that's the only way they would even be anywhere near that is if they're getting Rodgers.
Well,
right?
if they get Rodgers, they are not.
Well, sure. Then that changes everything.
They go like 5-1 or 6-1.
Sure.
Right. So why would they be in the middle right now? Like, because they might get him?
Yes.
Is that it?
Probably.
I guess. Okay.
I mean, also the Chargers. Like, I love Justin Herbert as much as anybody, but the Chargers.
They got some work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a pretty good roster, but yeah, that's a great value. I mean, you think about Patrick Mahomes misses a month with some injury. It's all there for anyone for the taking, you know?
Interesting. Mark follows up with the point of Julio not giving the Titans any extra wins at all. Get 2 Joneses for the defense, and then we can talk. I mean, they have completely changed their defense. The defense is totally different.
Right. Like, I don't know if it's going to work, but, like, yes, this whole, but what about the defense? Well, it's a completely different defense.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have no clue what it's going to look like.
We'll see if the choices were good. I mean, to me, that's a bigger, like, if you want to talk about, and we're going to talk about this later in the show, the whole, like, John Robinson, pressure on him with all this stuff. To me, it's, okay, what about his choices on defense? You know, that's the bigger question on him. Like, no matter what happens with Julio Jones, I will not change from golf clap that you did this move. But the defense is going to be a huge part of what they do, and we'll see. But, my gosh, they have done stuff. They got a whole bunch of different dudes out there this year.
Right. And look, I've got as many questions as anybody about this defense. I mean, you're taking a guy in the first round that we have no clue whether or not he's going to be able to step on the field and play at the first part of this season. So, I mean, look, there's a risk there. You've given $16 million a year to a guy that just tore his ACL to come rush the passer. There's a lot of risk on this defense. But to sit here and just act like the defense is the same as last year and nothing's been done, it's just not accurate. Now, it may not work. They could end up being worse on defense than they were last year. That'd be pretty hard, but they could.
In some ways, that'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. But I think if I had to bet right now, I would go with probably going to be a little bit better on defense than you were last year, based on just it's hard to get any worse.
You would think it's probably good for them that Kevin Johnson retired before.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that yesterday.
Before going Jonathan Joseph for a month and then being cut.
Here's Here's another puzzling one in the sports books. The over-under on FanDuel for regular season wins is still at 9.
Oof,
you can get Titans over 9 right now.
And remember, it's 17 games.
Yeah.
Again, jump on these things. Not telling you what to do,
but jump on these things.
Yeah, but if you so choose to engage in these things, engage.
Might be busy at break.
Maybe so. Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Travis in Coopertown texting in. Looking to the future a bit, just think how good it's going to be to have Julio in the locker room to help develop and work with our new young receivers. Talking about A.J. Brown, Des Fitzpatrick in there as well. Certainly doesn't hurt to have Julio Jones in there.
Yeah, I mean, that for just as a guy to watch, for one thing. And, of course, A.J. Brown has been studying him for years, and that seemed to probably have a positive impact on his game. And, of course, A.J. Brown's moved into that situation where he can be a mentor now, too. I mean, I think A.J. Brown's a natural leader also. So, yeah, I hadn't thought about that aspect of it, but it's never a bad thing to have great players at any position and what that can do for the young guys at that position.
When we come back, we'll be joined by David Beauclair from SI.com. Get his thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans. How does that shake up the landscape in the AFC? All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesale Link Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, breaking down Julio Jones to the Titans. And to help us do that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend David Beauclair from SI.com. David, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
Gentlemen, I am great. How are you?
We are doing great. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. So, David, we'll start with just the easy question. Your reaction to Julio Jones to the Titans, and how big a deal is this for Titans fans? You know this. You've watched this team since they've come here. It's been a struggle at times to find some wide receivers. Now they've got 2 legitimate studs on the outside. How big a deal is this day for Titans fans?
Yeah, like I was thinking about it in terms of comparing it last year to adding Jadeveon Clowney right before the start of the season. When you're talking about a big name guy and sort of a big storyline throughout the off season here, but this feels different in a way. Like Clowney, it felt like a luxury that the Titans didn't necessarily need, but when you can add a guy like that, you took the chance and you wanted to do it. This year, you're not only getting a guy with a great reputation, a great history in the league, you're getting a guy that this team really needs, at a spot where you looked at the roster and you say it's not good enough right now. And, you go from being not good enough to probably having the best 1-2 punch of wide receivers in the league right now. That referencing Clowney again, that certainly didn't work out the way anyone hoped. There's no guarantees with this, especially when you look at Julio Jones coming off a season in which he missed 7 games because of injury. He's 32 years old. This team has a terrible history with aging elite wide receivers, but certainly as we sit here on June the 8th, if you're a Titans fan, you have to feel really good and really excited about what this could mean for the season now.
What did you think about the price, David, and just about the ramifications with this roster and the cap moving forward?
Joe, the cap stuff, it's always it's interesting and it is a real challenge for John Robinson and guys like Vin Marino and whatnot. But there's always things that can be done. I never thought that the salary cap was going to be a real impediment to getting this deal done. I thought the asking price was going to be the big issue, and if you're the Titans, if you're Titans fans, all the initial reporting was that Atlanta wanted a first-round pick and whatever else, and that teams were sort of holding fast that they weren't going to give up a first-round pick for Julio Jones. The Titans did not give up a first-round pick, so that sort of feels like a little bit of a win for them. It is, though. You give John Robinson credit for the fact that he lives for today. He'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes, but. He hasn't put together a really big draft class here in quite some years, and at some point, you need as many young, affordable guys as you can get, and giving up a second round pick next year, that's not an easy thing to do, but I do believe in the NFL, it's probably better to do that. Just live for today, worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes, especially when you've got a team that you feel like can win the division, can be in the playoffs, can it be a Super Bowl contender? I'm not ready to say that with this bunch yet, but certainly if they can get some things together on the defensive side, get on a roll, that it could get exciting around here this year.
David, as you look at Julio coming in, what do you think this move can do for Derrick Henry? I mean, he 2,000 yards last year. We know how good Derrick Henry is. What do you think adding another weapon like Julio Jones could do for Derrick Henry in this offense?
Well, yeah, I think you just look at the the Baltimore playoff game. I mean, everybody knows by now that the key to stopping Derrick Henry is not to let him get through the line of scrimmage, get up to speed and do what he does from there. So, what Baltimore did was, they loaded guys in the box, said, we're going to get you down, we're going to get you on the ground before you really get going. Well, Now it's going to be next to impossible for teams to do that when you've got A.J. Brown on one side and Julio Jones on the other. Are you if you're a defensive coordinator, are you going to say we're going to sell out to stop the run and make them throw to beat us? I mean, if you do that, fine, but you have to know that, well, they're capable of throwing to beat you too. It's not that they don't have the capability. I think it will make life easier for Derrick Henry. It will make the pursuit of another 2,000-yard season more realistic, especially with a 17th game on the schedule. But Derrick Henry's interesting to me because any by any analytics measure, anything that anybody talks about in those regards, he's not going to be as good this year as he was last year. So the question is, how much is he going to come back, and does this give him a chance to be that much closer to what he was last year?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've thought about like the historical comparisons at all. We've been batting that around a little bit, David. Anything come to mind on past teams that have had a back of that caliber with two receivers like this? Someone actually just tweeted at me, Franco, Swan, and Stallworth. That's not bad.
Not bad.
I think Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne with those Colts teams, and Edgerrin James had an 1,800-yard season one year with that group, and in fact, Edgerrin James, I remember when he came up for pro or the Hall of Fame here a few years ago, and I remember thinking, well, James was he was a good back, but I don't see him as a Hall of Fame guy. And then I went and looked at his numbers, and he had 1,500, he had 1,700, he had a stretch of another stretch of 4 straight years with more than 1,100 yards every year. I mean, he's a guy, he's a guy who benefited greatly from an offense that you can't you just couldn't say we're going to take away one thing. You sort of had to defend everything honestly all over the field. And then when you had Peyton Manning kind of running that show, just imagine what that was like. Ryan Tannehill, as good as he's been, is no Peyton Manning, but he can still make defenses pay for whatever they want to wherever they want to leave themselves exposed.
David Beauclair from SI.com on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So, David, with that in mind, as you look at Julio coming in, all the change that we've seen on defense that, quite honestly, I mean, nobody really knows what that's going to look like at this point. What do you think this move does for the Titans in the big picture? Are they right there with Kansas City? Are they below them? Are they still the favorites in the division? How would you answer what Julio Jones and that addition does for this team as far as expectations are concerned heading into this season?
Right now, Robby, it gives them a chance to outscore people, which I think they're going to need to do early in the year. When you look at all the changes to the secondary, there's 5 cornerbacks from this team last year who aren't on this team this year. You don't have Kenny Vaccaro starting at safety anymore. All the communication, everything that goes into playing pass defense in the secondary is so critical. Then you take Kevin Johnson away, the one veteran guy you added who actually knew something about the system and knew something about the language that the coaches are speaking and whatnot, and the guy who was going to help teach it to some of the young guys. You take him out of the picture, so now the communication becomes that much more difficult. Now you say, okay, well, the pass rush can help. And yes, you added Bud Dupree, and Bud Dupree's got to be an upgrade over anything we saw here last year, but he's coming off reconstructive knee surgery in November. Is he going to be at 100% at the start of the year? What's he going to be able to contribute? So you figure through the first month of the season or so, if the pass rush is not significantly better than it was, if it's as bad as it was last year, and you've got a secondary of guys still trying to figure out each other and what their particular jobs are, I mean, that's almost a disaster scenario, particularly in terms of what the early part of the schedule holds. But I think I think you add Julio Jones, you've got a chance to win some games, 38-35 and whatnot. I don't think they're on par with the Chiefs yet. I do think it makes the division sort of a toss-up between the Titans and the Colts. I figured, Tennessee was pretty firmly a number 2 team in the division prior to this. So, there's no question the Titans are a better football team now than they were on Saturday. The question is, I guess, how good, and we won't know that for a little while.
So do you think the Titans are saying that with this move, David, like, this is a Super Bowl team? Like, is this a move you make? If you make this move, is that what you're saying? Because I've heard some of that reaction.
Yeah, I think, Joe, it feels to me like, honestly, 2022, like next year feels like what this team is setting up for. It feels like they're one more off season away, given all the salary cap took from them this year. I think what this year does is it gives you a chance to. What this move does is it gives you a chance to make another run at the division, to be a serious playoff team again. Make sure you're still attractive to free agents next year when the salary cap's going to go back up. You'll have some flexibility and whatnot, because it's not like Julio Jones is on a 1-year contract, right? I mean, he's here for a couple of years now. So, A.J. Brown's not going anywhere. Derrick Henry's not going anywhere. Ryan Tannehill's not going anywhere. All these big pieces are together for a while now, and you've got there's still some holes on this roster to be filled. I mean, Jonnu Smith hasn't been replaced. Daquan Jones hasn't really effectively been replaced, near as I can tell. You've got to get that secondary in order. You're still looking for a long-term answer at right tackle. There's there's these other things that it feels like it need if everything goes the way this team wants this year, it feels to me like they're set up to be really, really dangerous and good a year from now. And this is sort of just making sure the salary cap impact of this year doesn't cause too many steps backward.
The great David Beauclair from SI.com has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. David, great stuff as always, my friend. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning.
Oh, anytime, gentlemen. You guys have a good day.
Absolutely, David. You as well. When we come back, we'll react a little bit to what David had to say there regarding the Julio Jones trade. Does this make the Titans right there among the favorites in the AFC? We'll get to that. Also, some detail in the MMQB about how this Julio Jones deal came to be. We'll get to that coming up next as well. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing Julio Jones. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. So our good friend David Beauclair from SI.com joining us in the last segment, saying he doesn't believe that this puts the Titans right there with Kansas City at this point, and saying that maybe next year is the year where the Titans really could be dangerous. What's your reaction to that, Joe Rexrode, as you look at this roster, the salary cap, hopefully going back up next year as well? How close are the Titans right now, and do you think they could be even more dangerous with Julio Jones being a year older next year?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what he's saying. You know, I think the biggest question there is Derrick Henry. But I mean, look, before they signed him last year, it was like, oh, is he, running backs? He'd last 2 years in this league.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's this crazy idea that Derrick Henry could still be a very good player in 2023. You do have, the cap will be interesting, how this all shakes out. Lawan's deal, Byard's deal. At inside linebacker, you're probably losing Jayon Brown, maybe Rashaan Evans too, so you're looking very different there. But, if you had a draft and you got stronger at tight end, I think the big thing there is like the secondary. If it shakes out and you can kind of build a secondary this year that can be effective with young players, you could see how that could be quite a bit better in 22 than 21. So I look at it like a 2-year thing, but I don't discount this year as a possible run either. I agree with David. Like early in the year, I think the Titans are going to look at that offense to carry things. That just makes sense. They should be able to go right now. I mean, the opener against the Cardinals, that could be fun.
Yeah,
that could be wild. But obviously, the investment you made in the defense right now for this year suggests that this year, at some point, it needs to become decent, solid, competent. And I don't think that that's a stretch. And I think if it does, I'd be interested to see what this team could do in the postseason.
So Albert Breer with the MMQB on SI.com has come out with a piece kind of detailing how this Julio Jones trade to the Titans came together with Atlanta. And we've talked about Julio Jones requesting a trade, and apparently this dates back to a couple of years ago when negotiations between Jones and the Falcons and how difficult it was to come to a contract agreement at that point and damaging the relationship between Julio Jones and the Atlanta Falcons. Also, Breer in this piece points out that the clip that we played a few weeks ago of Jones going on TV with Shannon Sharpe, apparently Julio Jones had no idea that he was on live television at that point, which, if that's the case, not a great look from Shannon Sharpe there. I don't know if I'd be answering any more phone calls from Shannon Sharpe if I'm Julio Jones at that point. But kind of going through the process of, the history between the Titans and Arthur Smith, highlighting that while that's kind of low-hanging fruit in this conversation, the Titans did have the best offer on the table. There was no first-round pick on the table for Julio Jones, which I think, Joe, we kind of figured that one out on our own. So if there's a first-round pick on the table for Julio Jones, Falcons probably taking that at this point. So the Titans end up getting Julio Jones. It's been a kind of an ongoing discussion. Said the Ravens were also in the mix at one point, but pulled out of the race after selecting Rashad Bateman in the first round. So the more you kind of read through this, the more it kind of seems like it was going to be the Titans that were really the ones making the push for Julio Jones. And as we know, that happened. And a lot of interesting stuff here about some conversations between Alabama coach Nick Saban and the Titans as well, doing some background on Julio Jones. Nick Saban getting a contract extension, by the way, yesterday through 2028.
Yeah, Nick Saban's going to coach forever.
Apparently so. But the more I read this report from Albert Breer, the more, it seems like it was pretty much the Titans to lose when it comes to Julio Jones here.
Yeah, and there's some good detail, and actually there's a piece that just came out this morning too from Jeff Schultz, friend of the show, coworker of mine at The Athletic, about the Falcons and Julio and the backstory of, it was years in the making of this sort of this parting of the ways, and look, I frankly, I have some sympathy on the Falcons side when you redo a deal and then there's 3 years left on it, or 2 or 3, and demand that it be redone again because some of the other receivers around the league got bigger deals. I mean, I'm all for players getting what they can get, but I mean, I have a little bit of sympathy on the club side on that whole situation. Obviously, there was some bitterness that resulted from all that, and it was headed toward this. But very interesting, I thought, about the Titans, and John Robinson referred to this in general the other day when he did his presser, but you have some details here about really going to Saban in particular on this, which is interesting to talk about Julio Jones, try to figure out, if he's going to fit in, if it's going to work out. You don't want to bring someone in who's going to be disruptive or going to be a problem, and it sounds like they were satisfied with the answers they got. So it was a very interesting piece, and the Titans are flat out just the team that offered the most. So you could be a Titans fan. We got some of this on the text line yesterday. Well, why didn't anyone else come with this? It's not like it's some huge price, but why are other teams hesitant? And it's a fair question.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a fair deal. It's right in line with what I figured it would come down. I think you predicted last week basically this exact price, right?
Yep.
And then Stillman fired you?
He did.
He fired you. Everyone's going to get fired.
I felt good about
Everyone's about to get fired because of this whole situation.
Yes.
But I get why teams are hesitant. But, I mean, a team in the Titans' position, second-round pick, a fourth comes back, a sixth comes back. Yes, the salary, that's going to be interesting. But, man, I feel like it's not an exorbitant price.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Plain Joe on the text line says, Beauclair said the Titans are firmly in the number 2 spot for the division. Based on what? Carson Wentz's poor performance the last couple of years, the pieces they lost on their offensive and defensive lines, their lack of receivers. Curious which part he thinks puts them over the Titans. Now, in fairness,
he said they were
number 2. Now he says they are neck and neck.
But that's still that stood out to me. I'm like, really? You had them as the firm, clear favorite. Well, listen, we didn't get to ask a follow-up on that, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that means that David feels like Carson Wentz is going to be pretty good.
Yep.
I mean, that's the whole thing here. If you believe Carson Wentz is going to have his career revived, reuniting with Frank Reich and everything, with a good offensive line, good running game, well, okay. They have a good defense. I mean, they're a good team. It's not crazy to think the Colts could win the AFC South. I think even now it's not crazy to think that.
Sure.
But I was a little surprised by that, too, that he thought it was firmly Colts 1, Titans 2. Before this, still favored the Titans very narrowly in this division.
Yeah, and I think, as he said, there's no question about it. I mean, the Titans are a better football team today than they were Saturday before they make this deal. The question is going to come down to, okay, well, how much better? Like, what does Julio Jones still have left in the tank? Is he close to the Julio Jones that we've seen in Atlanta? Is he close to the Julio Jones that we saw last year? If that's the Julio Jones you're getting, like, you can't convince me if that's the Julio Jones that they're getting that doesn't make the difference in a couple of games as they move forward. He's been that good.
Well, and it could make a difference in a couple of games. That's always hard. It's like, okay, what's the one player? What is the bottom line? Even in a given week, we were talking about odds earlier. Sometimes like a key player will be lost or will come back, and like the line moves like a half point.
Right.
But you look at it like that could make a complete difference in that game. I don't know, but I think it could be transformational for this offense, which was going to be good, maybe very good, probably not as good as last year. Now it might be better than last year. That to me makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
I can't put a number on it, but I think it could be a lot.
According to Diana Rossini, Julio Jones, as we know, was in the facility yesterday for the Titans, flew out. He's expected to be back on Monday for his physical and is expected to attend Titans minicamp next week as well. So Julio Jones looks like we'll be at Titans minicamp next week.
Let me tell you, let me promise everyone here right now, my videos will be amazing.
I bet they will be.
Thankfully, I've been working years to craft, to work on my craft as a videographer.
Then Julio catching
It's
like
finally going to be
fade balls in the end zone. You're ready for it.
Every drill. Every drill, I'm going to edit them together. It's going to be amazing.
When we come back, we'll get to one of Joe Rexrode's favorite pastimes here on the show, and that is yelling about Jared Stillman and his take on Julio Jones to the Titans. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We've all had that dream. It's a tie game, bottom of the ninth, the bases are loaded, and Robby Stanley here to tell you on FanDuel Sportsbook, you get more than one shot to swing for the fences because FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free. That's right, new users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win, and it only gets better from there. Check out FanDuel's new promo live every Tuesday, $5 Dinger Tuesdays. Place a $25 or more wager on any player to hit a home run on Tuesday and get a $5 bonus in site credit for every home run hit in that game, a max of $25. There's a reason FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. The app is simple to use. They've got great odds on all different betting markets. Fun bet types like the same game parlay and always-on promotions to let you get more action out of every game day. And when you win on FanDuel, they pay you your winnings in as little as 24 hours. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and sign up with promo code ROB to get in on the action. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code ROB. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund and bonus issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. A max bonus of $25 per game. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Also discussing A little Greenbrier, Tennessee slander on The Athletic. What's going on over there, Rexrode?
I mean, I wrote a piece about the Vols baseball after covering the game the other day. By the way, it's LSU Tennessee, which is wild this week, and we got schedules, by the way. And Vandy plays early Friday and Saturday. It's so exciting. Tennessee starts Saturday, and both teams, by the way, are going to be on like ESPN 2 or something. Yeah. So I know a lot of complaints from fans. These games are going to be on TV. So be happy about that. But, yeah, one of the Tennessee players is from Greenbrier, which I mentioned in the piece, and someone says, who knows where Greenbrier is? I'm like, Robbie Stanley knows where Greenbrier is.
Shout out to Greenbrier, Tennessee.
Yeah, there's like an awesome pizza place there, too.
There's an awesome pizza place there. I mean, Greenbrier's a great town.
You got it all.
We do.
By the way, I do need to quickly shout out my daughter Caroline. If anybody's looking at the live stream, this is my early Father's Day present. I wore the Vibe and Robby T-shirt yesterday. Yeah. Well, we can't coordinate this, but today I've got my Dwight Schrute False shirt.
Very nice.
Thank you, Caroline. She's at camp this week, and like Katie and I are like, we don't know what to do with ourselves. Like, like
the peacekeeper in the house is gone.
Right, the peacekeeper, like the favorite person. We don't know what to do. And when kids go to camp, we have her phone.
Yeah.
Like there's no we can like send an email, and then sometimes we get pictures of like the activities. It's so it's kind of nerve-wracking, man. I'll be honest with you.
So got a texter on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com says, I heard the next segment is all about Rexrode yelling at Stillman, so I am all in. So what has Jared Stillman done now that has upset you, Rexrode?
I'm not yelling at Stillman. I was texting him yesterday as I was listening to the show driving back from Knoxville. I didn't text while I was driving, by the way. I stopped at a gas station. And I had to stop. I didn't stop to text him, but when I stopped, I texted him.
I kind of think you stopped
just to yell at Jared.
In Crossville, in Cookville, and then in Lebanon.
Just hit all the towns along the way.
Stopped at all three of those towns just to text Jared.
Yeah. I drank a lot of coffee doing the show in Knoxville yesterday. Had to make a lot of stops, okay?
There you go. Okay, there you go.
But, I mean, I know it's fine. Jared's the contrarian on this, and that's fine. And look, I mean, I agree with him that this is like loading up a credit card to a certain extent. But my point to him was he's big on like, okay, this means they have to not just win it, but they have to be elite this year. Like you are saying you're elite, you have to be elite. If you aren't elite, someone should be in the hot seat. Jared goes to the hot seat quickly. I don't necessarily like here's the specific back and forth we had. So I'm like, okay, so if they go 9-8, someone's losing their job, and he's like, he thinks Vrabel might. I'd be surprised if they went 9-8 and Mike Vrabel got fired. Now, people wouldn't be happy, and people shouldn't be happy. So we agree with that. But my question, I guess, is, okay, if they didn't make this move and they went 9-8, what should fans feel? Should fans not be upset going back to this and saying, man, why didn't you try to get Julio Jones? I mean, can't you flip it around on this?
Well, because your core players in the prime of their career. This is kind of the same thing as the Predators discussion with me. Like, when you've got Tannehill, Derrick Henry in their prime right now, that's what made last year so frustrating, and why we talked about it in the fashion that we did, is because it felt like you totally wasted a year of Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry with how awful that defense was.
You did, but you tried. You didn't make the choices didn't work out for you. But but they also had go-for-it moves last year, right?
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like, if you left this team alone and you waltzed into this season with Josh Reynolds as your number 2 wide receiver, like, to me, your offense was not going to be good enough to compete at the level you need to get it to. Maybe it was, but that's just the way I felt about it heading in. So, to your point, like, if you leave things alone, you don't go get Julio, and you finish 9-8, it's still, to me, a wasted year of Tannehill and Henry in their prime. So I would be just as upset about that as I would be if things don't work out with Julio.
Yeah, and again, like a good example that Jared has used, and of course Floyd Reese at his GM tenure, which ultimately resulted in him not being the GM anymore. And they didn't win it. So they get to the Super Bowl, they're a yard short, and then you're kicking the can, you're doing everything you can to keep that team together as long as you can, right? You absolutely do that. I do that 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000. Like, so I just don't understand why anyone should care right now that in 23 or 24 they might be in trouble. Like that, and we talked about this yesterday on the show. I mean, this is my rant. Like, if you have a chance to do something, do it right now. This team could, because you could not do this, and you could be more careful, and you could be fine and stay out of cap prison and still suck. Absolutely.
Yep.
Because you don't have a quarterback. I mean, when Ryan Tannehill's not this level of quarterback anymore, what's your next quarterback? How are you getting him? Who is it?
Probably gonna have to suck.
Are you gonna tank to go get the next big guy, or are you gonna get lucky and trade a 4th-round pick? I mean, I don't know. You could easily suck being totally financially responsible, and I do think the cap is overrated to some extent.
It's
not
overrated.
Totally.
It's not non-existent. Is the way I like to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, I mean, all opinions on this are great. But I do think that Titans fans should be excited, and I think that they would have just as much right to be unhappy after a mediocre year if they didn't make this move. And Jared seems to think like this move ratchets up the pressure on everyone. I don't necessarily buy that.
Well, I think if Julio Jones comes in and he looks like a shell of himself, and he just doesn't look like the same Julio Jones that we've seen, and you were the only team that was willing to pay the price that you paid, there will be fans that look back on this and say, what is John Robinson doing? Like, how is he the only one that was willing to put this price together? I guess a lot of this just comes down to what's your confidence level in Julio Jones. And until I am proven otherwise, like, I've still got a lot of confidence that Julio Jones is a really good player. So I don't worry about that as much.
I just don't think there's information. Yeah, it could work out that way, and you're right. It'll certainly be there will be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking on it, and you look back, oh, so you were the one team that paid the big price, and these other teams are smarter than you. But I don't think there's information out there that tells you he's A.J. Green right now.
Right.
You know, it could work out that way. At some point, it happens to everybody, and you can't predict when it's going to happen. But the information that's available, which is basically all the times he played last year, including through the hammy injury, is that he's still really good.
Look, I have no problem with John Robinson going for it here. I mean, I just don't. And Port, you talked about this, and I think you were using it in the pass rusher discussion before free agency about, you know, like at some point you just got to go for it and take your swing with a big name guy. And you know, we talked about with Josh Reynolds being the number 2. Like, if you're the Titans, are you undervaluing the receiver position? Like, to me, Josh Reynolds, based on what I've seen out of him so far, he's not a number 2 guy. I feel a ton better about Josh Reynolds as a number 3 on this team. And with Julio coming in, maybe it doesn't work out. But to me, I have no problem with John Robinson going for it now with Derrick Henry going to be 27 years old, Ryan Tannehill right now 32 years old. Like, you're in win now mode. I have no issue with John Robinson going for it with Julio Jones.
Like, what's going to help you better? This is something that I keep coming back to on this trade. What's going to help you more with the window of Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, and the rest of this Titans core that you feel like can make a run at this, even though Kansas City is this big Goliath in the AFC? Is it going to be Julio Jones and you're kind of rolling the dice on him and his health and him still being an elite receiver? Or is it going to be that second-round pick in next year's draft? I am taking the chance with Julio Jones probably 9 out of 10 times. And that's what I keep coming back to, and the fact that this is worth it. And it will probably stink, 3 years from now that they're going through some cap stuff. But I am so willing to go through that to give this core a shot instead of playing it safe every year with the cap and just being a 9 or 10 win team every year.
That you said it perfectly. I mean, I think every Titans fan should feel that way. I don't want to tell everybody how to feel. I feel like I do that a lot, though, even though I say I don't want to do that.
That's half of what we do.
Yeah, but yeah, like there are 17 now Sundays that you can watch your team play, right? That's another part of this. The rest of the year, like what do you have? You have things like this. Like you're evaluating what your GM's doing in the draft, but you don't know.
Yep.
Is the free agent signing going to work out? Everybody was celebrating Clowney last year. Well, it didn't work out. But to me, this is a reason to be excited, like right now. And I think it'll be interesting with tickets and all that stuff. I think this is going to have a real impact. That's not the point is to win. That's what they're trying to do. But I agree. Like if you are worried about, in a few years from now, we don't want to have this huge dip. Well, great. So you stayed here? Okay, it's good to have good winning teams and there's consistency, but this is a window. It's a small window. And I think if you don't do everything possible, that's when fans should be mad at you.
Agreed. Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Got a texture that says, as a Greenbrier native, thanks for the shout-out. We love you guys in Greenbrier.
Boom.
We love you too.
Are you the mayor? Could you be the mayor of Greenbrier?
Yes.
Maybe.
Is there a mayor of Greenbrier?
Yeah.
Who's that?
I don't know.
I think you should come after. Should come after his or her job.
Maybe so.
Maybe it was the mayor of Greenbrier that just texted in.
Maybe so. If that's the case, I will not come after your job.
Well, Robby will be deputy mayor. How about that?
Let's do that. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Titans. What are the biggest question marks with this Julio Jones trade as it pertains to the Tennessee Titans? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. 102.5 The Game and the Nashville Predators will host a 615-day celebration presented by Social Furniture at Fordyce Center Bellevue on June 15th, benefiting Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. This all-day event will feature fun for the whole family while paying tribute to Nashville's annual 615 Day, an occasion that pairs Music City's area code with the date of June 15th. There is also a silent auction now open. Just text Preds to 76278 to check out all the great items and to bid. Proceeds will benefit the Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We'll be joined by Julio Jones' former teammate, former Atlanta Falcons tight end Jacob Tamme, coming up at 8 o'clock. So looking forward to that conversation with him. Joe, let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, I love Jared so much and his takes. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with you, Joe. I think the last year or 2 years, Jared would like this move. He's changed his tune, maybe because of the Clowney move. Either way, I can't control what John Robinson does. I, as a fan, have to roll with it. If I'm a true fan, I'd still root for them, even if the deals are questionable.
I mean, you can't believe. What are you talking about? What Jared family member is this? Conflicted. Come on, man.
Can't believe that he's agreeing with you.
Can't believe it. Crazy talk. All right, I'll take it. I'll take your agreement. Thank you.
Jonathan on the text line says, I'm always a fan of Jared, and I don't always agree with him. He's entertaining to listen to, but yesterday his negativity was exhausting. Can we not just celebrate the biggest superstar in Nashville sports history for one day?
Wait, the biggest what?
Superstar in Nashville sports history.
Is that true?
I don't know.
So
He's up there.
The funny thing is, like we talked about it yesterday, like my buddy who's a Titans fan immediately thought of Randy Moss and Andre Johnson.
Who could forget
right?
that tenure?
So I mean, they were technically here.
They were.
Yeah, this is different from that.
Andre Johnson made a big catch in Detroit.
Oh, he sure did. Oh, I was there.
And then did nothing after that.
Yeah.
What throw by Marcus that was.
That was a
great throw.
It was it was like a knuckleball. Somehow got through like 3 people.
I mean, is PK Subban in that conversation with Julio?
Yeah. I mean, I think Julio's more of a superstar than PK was. But, yeah, I think he's in the conversation.
I just think the football, hockey, probably right.
No, that's fair.
Although, but when you have that discussion, I mean, if we're including Canada and worldwide hockey lovers, that's what's always interesting. Obviously, football is king in this country.
Sure. But
Subban was an international superstar.
Yeah.
Austin Powers, international man of mystery. I mean, that's a good comparison. I mean, who else? I mean, look, like Derrick Henry is.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Is becoming that guy. Yeah. Steve McNair was a superstar.
Yep.
Pecorino.
I mean, Vince Young, like him or not, Vince Young was a superstar.
Yeah. I mean, Heisman winner, one of the greatest college football games ever. Rookie of the year.
Awesome rookie year. Yeah. Now, it didn't go well. Like, it didn't go the way you thought it would. But the star power of Vince Young when he first got here, it's pretty high.
Like, if you could get as much good football out of Julio Jones as the Titans got out of Vince Young, that's probably about what you're hoping for, right?
Couple years. Yeah.
If you're going off of Twitter followers.
Oh, boy.
PK Subban has over 1 million. Julio Jones is at over 500K, and then Derrick Henry's at just under 400K.
Yeah.
If you're just going off of that alone.
Julio's account's private, though. I tried to follow Julio Jones yesterday. I'm still pending.
Did he make that private after the Shannon Sharp stuff?
I don't know.
Or has it always been that way?
I don't know.
I hope he accepts our Twitter
follow
followers.
request.
I just know Deion Lewis still has me blocked. I don't know.
Me too.
But to that point, though, I also think that's Subban. I mean, sometimes your Twitter following has something to do with what you do on Twitter, and Subban's very active, right? I don't know, but I don't feel like Julio Jones is like the personality on social media that Subban is.
Probably not. I mean, very few people are.
That's
to be honest. Somebody on the text line says Peter Forsberg, bigger superstar than Julio Jones. Maybe. That depends. I mean, again, that goes back to the football hockey thing. Like, I mean, you're talking about a Hall of Fame player, one of the great players of all time, but is Peter Forsberg more popular than Julio Jones? I don't know.
How would you compare Peter Forsberg and Subban coming in here? Peter Forsberg way more accomplished.
Yeah.
Way later in his career.
It's different too. You got social media.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things different about it, but
On a different topic, I got to read this tweet by Mike Herndon. This is a very good from Broadway Sports. So he says, okay, so QB-A, okay, 61.8%, 3,500 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks, 6.8 yards per attempt.
Okay.
QB-B, QB-B, 68.9%, 4,800 yards, 50 touchdowns, 6 picks, 8.3 yards per attempt. It's a trick question. They're both Tom Brady. In 2006, Brady throwing to Troy Brown and Caldwell, and in 2007 throwing to Randy Moss and Wes Welker. The point obviously being quarterbacks tend to benefit from good players around them.
I would say so.
Good people to catch the passes. But there is. I mean,
does that mean Tannehill, like the bar this year, should be 4,500 yards, 47 touchdowns?
No, because I think they're still going to be very balanced. I don't think they're going to have. I mean, who ran the ball for the Patriots back then? I have no idea. Who the heck was their running back then? I mean,
was it Corey Dillon?
I never
was he there
know.
Then?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe. So I don't think Tannehill's going to have gaudy numbers, except I think his yards per attempt could be really strong and his complete. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to have outrageous accumulation of numbers this year. But we'll see. There is pressure on Tannehill. I mean, I don't think that's disputable.
So when it comes to Julio Jones, what are the biggest question marks as it relates to him and his success with the Titans? And Tony Kornheiser from the wonderful show PTI was talking about Julio Jones to the Titans and Julio's age. Here's what Tony Kornheiser of ESPN had to say.
Jones is 32 years old, and you add that in combination with the fact that last year was his least productive year, and I can understand how a person would think he's on the downslope of his career. Me personally, I think he's going to have 1 or 2 great years. I would tell you that your favorite receiver in the world, Larry Fitzgerald, was a great receiver well into his 30s.
Yeah.
I would tell you that Randy Moss was a great receiver into his 30s. And to your point about what Tennessee has, they are now a team that can beat you short and beat you long. And you can't double Julio Jones. The more you double Julio Jones or A.J. Brown, the more Derrick Henry gets the ball and only has to get through one line. You know, right. I mean, they're not a good defensive team. But Ryan Tannehill has proven there that he's a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
Are they a Super Bowl team?
Maybe.
Not if Kansas City's still in the AFC.
Well.
But they're now, you look at Baltimore, you look at Buffalo, you look at Cleveland, Tennessee is every bit
right
the
there
team
with
that they are right now.
So that was the conversation on PTI yesterday regarding Julio Jones and the Titans. What do you think of what Kornheiser threw out there? Not very concerned about Julio's age, pointing to Randy Moss being a great receiver into his 30s, Larry Fitzgerald being a great receiver into his 30s as well. What's your concern level that maybe the cliff is closer to Julio Jones than some people think? And how difficult is that to project if you're John Robinson, looking to the impact Julio could have with this offense?
Well, first of all, Kornheiser, Tannehill has proved. Tannehill is proven, but Tannehill has not proven. It's not a verb. But anyway, we're going to keep pushing this until people get it right. Yeah.
Skiatika.
We don't know. Thank you. We don't know for sure. But, and look, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, man, he's going to be great at 36. It doesn't matter. To me, it's really, does he have 2 more really good years in him? Right now? Force me to bet either way on that. I'm going to say yes. I think the missing games because of injury is certainly a concern. He's had foot stuff, he's had knee stuff, he had hamstring stuff last year. He's had a lot of nagging injuries. He's played through most of them. Most years he's played most games. If you look at his career before last year when he only played 9.
Yep.
And again, he tried to play through the hammy last year. So look, that's a concern. It's real, but I wouldn't look at all the information we have, the duration of his career, what he's done for the most part, and even like last year and how he played when he was out there, and think he's done. At some point he will be. And if that happens, Titans are going to be hurting. But right now, I look at it and I would bet on a couple more really good years for him. Is it like dominant 1,800 yards, 2015 Julio Jones? No. If it's 80% of that, you'll take that.
You take that
you
every
will
day of the
take
week.
that with those other two guys, and you will cause problems for people.
102.5 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered up to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Tune in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from 102.5 The Game, T-Mobile, and Nashville SC. When we come back, we'll be joined by Jacob Tamme, former NFL tight end, teammates with Julio Jones with the Atlanta Falcons as well. Looking forward to that conversation coming up with him. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans. And to help us break that down, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in former NFL tight end and former Atlanta Falcon tight end as well, Jacob Tamme. Jacob, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking time to join us this morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Jacob, you were teammates with Julio in 2015 and 2016 in Atlanta. Just your initial thoughts on this deal to send Julio to the Tennessee Titans, and what do you think of this fit for Julio and the Titans offense with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, Ryan Tannehill already in place?
Well, I tell you, when you say those 2 years, it makes me realize how long ago it was. Man, it's been a minute since 2015 and 16, hasn't it? But, I tell you, I mean, if you're a Titans fan, I don't know how you could possibly, be more excited. Putting Julio with Brown and Henry, just exclude Tannehill, although he's done a really nice job. But I don't care who the quarterback is. I mean, when you've got Derrick Henry, you've got Brown on one side, and you got Julio on the other, man, I mean, I'll tell you, Julio was probably not. There's no probably. Julio was the best athlete I ever played with, and I played 9 years with a lot of good teams. Went to 3 different Super Bowls. Julio was the best athlete I ever played with, and I think that offense with those 3 guys together, that's exciting.
Jacob, the Titans, as they were kind of looking at this possible trade, did a lot of, calling around, obviously trying to see how Julio would fit in the locker room and things like that. What can you tell us about Julio as a guy, as a teammate? How do you think that will go here?
I loved Julio. Julio is a friend. Julio was, to be as great of an athlete as he was, to be as big of a star as he was. I played 7 years with Peyton, and I think, in Indy and in Denver, and left him to go to Atlanta with Matt and with Julio and those guys. I think Julio was, that combination of star power and great teammate. The only person that I would put, ahead of him or with him in that would be Peyton Manning, because Julio really was. He was a straight up take care of business. I'm going to do my job, do my part, and everybody else do the same thing. He practiced hard. He played hard. He was willing to sacrifice for his teammates, and you don't always get that in your stars, So I loved playing with the guy and really respected him as a teammate and as a locker room guy. He's not the biggest talker, he's relatively quiet in the locker room, but not in a bad way. In a good teammate, take care of business, worker kind of way.
So, Jacob, with that in mind, I mean, obviously, when your time in Atlanta with Julio, he was incredibly productive. He was the best wide receiver in the league, and now he comes into a situation where, as we talked about, A.J. Brown is here, Derrick Henry is here, and Julio is 32, coming off a year where injuries were plaguing him a little bit last year in Atlanta. As you watch Julio play now, as you factor in his age as well, what do you think the Titans are getting? What do you think Julio has left in the tank as he comes here now to Tennessee?
Well, that's a question I don't really have an answer to. I don't know. But I'll know this. 5-6 years ago when I was playing with him, we had a moment where I thought, man, this guy may never age, and obviously everybody does at some point. But one off season, we went to Miami for a couple days and did workouts. Matt kind of organized it, and a bunch of receivers, tight ends went down there. And we spent a few nights down there and went to the high school and worked out. And we rode the bus to the high school, and it was probably like a 45-minute bus ride. I mean, we were like, downtown Miami out to this high school. So it's 45 minutes. We get off the bus, and I go sit down, and I start stretching. I need at least a solid 15 minutes to get loose here, maybe 20, 25. I got a little warm-up we need to go through. And I remember sitting on the turf, stretching and watching Julio get off the bus, and he already had his cleats laced up, and I swear he came off the bus straight into a deep post. He jogged off the bus steps, turned around onto the turf, and ran a deep post. And I just remember thinking, just looking at him right that day and being like, man, what an athlete. Like, what a unbelievable athlete this guy is. So, as far as where that stands right now, it's impossible for me to say. But I tell you, he's got a chance to go as long as anybody, as anybody could. He's got as good a chance to go as long with his career as anybody I've ever been around.
Jacob, what do you think about this from the Falcons' perspective and how kind of that all went down? I guess apparently he had no idea that he was on the air with the interview, when he did the phoner with Sharp there. But then obviously, I guess it's kind of been a few years in the coming between the Falcons and Julio as well. And what do you think about, Arthur Smith in as the head coach of the Falcons in the new direction?
Yeah, obviously I still got some friends in Atlanta and keep up with the team, and it's. I mean, I'm not saying it's sad, I guess, but it's tough. You see things. Dan Quinn's a good friend of mine, and obviously we had some really good years there, and then to see that kind of deteriorate was no fun, and then to see the situation with Julio get to where but that's kind of how organizations, it's kind of how they evolve. I mean, it happens everywhere with everything. It happened with Peyton and Indy, and there's no bad blood there. Just hey, Peyton Manning got cut though, man. He got cut. Like it's just it's crazy. So thinking about the Falcons moving forward, obviously rooting for them. Don't know enough details about the culture and everything there right now to step in. Actually, I do investment management and had a Zoom and did some educational stuff with some of their guys the other day. But other than that, I'm not in that locker room right now to know the culture, but certainly rooting for them moving forward, and it'd be fun to watch with Arthur Smith.
Former NFL tight end Jacob Tammy on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And Jacob, you mentioned Julio and his work ethic and the way he goes about handling his business in the locker room. Just the day-to-day interactions with Julio Jones and him trying to improve his craft, even still at his age, on the field. What sort of teammate do you think the Titans are getting? And how would you kind of describe his work ethic and the way that Julio goes about approaching his business?
So here's how I would describe it. My first year in Indy, I played several years with Reggie Wayne. I played 1 year with Marvin Harrison. So Marvin Harrison never talked to anybody, but he would walk. He had a little sly smile, but he was very, the quietest of quiet. Okay. Right. Reggie Wayne was not as quiet, but still a little more talkative. But he'd take care of his business. Like Reggie was going to make sure that Reggie was ready, period. Okay? No one had to worry about Reggie being ready. And I would say Julio, like personality-wise, is probably somewhere right in between those two. He's a quiet guy in the locker room, like I said, but he also will speak up if something needs to be said. He'll lead by example out there in practice. Julio's going to make sure that Julio is ready. He's going to be an asset to the other receivers. I saw him time and time again helping other receivers with technique things, how to think about the position, how to think about something the defense was doing, working with the quarterback. I mean, you're getting a great teammate from that perspective.
Jacob, I got to ask you, your Kentucky Wildcats. What have you thought of the job Stoops has done there? Could you imagine that this program would get where it is right now?
I'll tell you what. I actually saw Mark yesterday, and I'm so excited about the team this year. Mark's done a fantastic job. The recruiting that we're doing, I saw a little headline yesterday. Maybe this upcoming 2022 class maybe is like 13th in the country right now, and of course those things move a lot. But they're signing some real dudes, and have been for a couple years now. And I think the program's at a spot where. But look, I mean, we all know what the SEC is, right? And you can sit here and be optimistic all the time about your potential to really compete in the East. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit optimistic, So, got to get the quarterback position figured out and see who's going to really be the guy there. But they've been putting a ton of guys into the league, and I'm talking about big-time draft picks, right? And I think kids are seeing that, and I think they're seeing the way the team's been playing in spurts, and hopefully it'll be a really fun year to be a Wildcat fan.
Jacob, last thing for you here, and some people have made a big deal about this, especially from a national perspective of Julio Jones coming in and having the split targets with A.J. Brown and the workload that Derrick Henry has as well. How do you think Julio Jones will handle kind of a new role coming in and maybe being 1B instead of the absolute guy in Atlanta like he was with A.J. Brown? How do you think he goes about kind of splitting targets with A.J. Brown? How do you think he handles that?
I never once saw or heard Julio Jones be upset about not getting enough targets. We played some games in Atlanta where I'm telling you, I've never seen a player impact the defense so much. I mean, my last season, before I blew out my shoulder, I was on pace to have my best season ever, catches, touchdowns, all that stuff. Well, I was playing good and doing my role, but I mean, I'd be lying to you if a big part of that wasn't because I was playing with Julio Jones, man. The guy was just a total distraction to the entire defense. And so sometimes when you are that guy, it limits you a little bit. And maybe he's not that, in Tennessee. Maybe Brown and with the three of them together, I mean, Henry, Brown, and Julio, it's going to be really interesting to see what defenses do. And, again, I mean, to kind of belabor the point, but I really don't think he's a guy that's going to be a problem in that way. He's a guy that's a team player. And it's going to be a fit for defenses trying to figure out which one of those three they want to stop.
Well, Jacob, it's been great to have you on with us. We appreciate your perspective. Great stuff. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Jacob Tamme, former NFL tight end, teammates with Julio Jones in 2015 and 2016 with the Atlanta Falcons. Some very, very interesting stuff there from Jacob Tamme. We'll react to that when we come back. Take your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. Purchase a $30 Party Foul gift card for only $15. Party Foul has your Nashville hot chicken, local brews, boozy slushies, and wall-to-wall TVs. 4 locations downtown Nashville in the Gulch, Donaldson off 11 and Pike, Cool Springs Galleria in Franklin, and Murfreesboro off of Broad Street as well. Get yours now at theGameNashville.com. Welcome back again, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Joe Rexrode playing basketball in the background.
Sorry about
us
that.
Coming back into break there.
If that would have been a swish, you wouldn't have heard anything. That's my bad.
It's okay. It's all good. Let's go to the text line real quick. Ricky on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, amazing interview, fellas. Very insightful. Talking about our interview with Jacob Tamme in the last segment. Tell you what, that was some pretty good stuff from Jacob Tamme. Some high-quality endorsements from Jacob Tamme as it relates to Julio Jones. Not only the player, obviously, but the teammate as well. Seems like Jacob Tamme, nothing but positive things to say about Julio Jones.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong statement that best combination of star power and teammate he's had other than Peyton Manning. So,
yeah.
And
pretty good company to be in.
I mean, the thing with with Julio, I think the quiet thing is certainly, that he's known as a quiet guy. So I know some people think, you got to be rah-rah. Some people are. Some people, I mean, maybe that was one of your critiques of Marcus, the last number 8 for the Titans.
Nah,
but
I don't care about all that.
Yeah, just he never completed a pass, so
yeah.
That was the bigger problem.
Skipping rocks to this out route, yeah. Wasn't great.
But, yeah, that's a pretty strong endorsement from a guy who played a couple years with him.
Yeah, I mean, very positive things to say by Jacob Tamme there. And it was interesting, like he talked about, playing – obviously he's played with Reggie Wayne. He's played, towards the end of Marvin Harrison's career. So it's not like you're getting, prime level Marvin Harrison, but talked about – he's never played with anybody who impacts the defense in a way unlike, Julio Jones has as well. And he talked about like his last year there before he blew out his shoulder. Jacob Tamme, 31 years old, playing in 2016 with the Falcons. And, in 8 games, 31 catches, 210 yards. He already had 3 touchdowns that year. His season high was 4 touchdowns in his career before that. So he was on his way having a pretty good year for the Falcons that year, and he credits a lot of it to just playing with Julio Jones and the attention that he attracts to opposing defenses. And he brought up what I think is going to be interesting for all of us. If you're a defense, how do you go about dividing the attention that you're going to have to put in with some of these guys, with A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry? I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, and I think it's going to change probably on a week-to-week matchup basis. But, man, that can't be fun trying to prepare for the Titans with Julio Jones now in the fold as well.
And I think some of also what Jacob touched on there is probably a reason for optimism in terms of Julio's having some more good years.
Yeah.
When you're that much of a freak athlete, and again, you've been that durable other than last year, but for the most part, this guy's been out there week after week, performed week after week, very consistent. I mean, it doesn't all add up to someone who has hit the wall yet. No, there's no, you don't know exactly when that will be, but, and wear and tear. We talked about this with Matt Duchene, right? He's not old, but he has been in this league playing this very physical sport for a long time. You got to consider the miles logged. It's been a lot of miles logged, so you got to keep that in mind. But I think it speaks to some people just are built differently, and Julio Jones has always seemed like a guy who's built a little bit differently.
He does, and this conversation happens anytime you get a big time player, especially a big time wide receiver, either joining forces with another receiver or switching teams. Whatever happens, there's always the conversation of, okay, well, how are they going to handle fewer targets? How are they going to handle maybe the ball not coming their way as often as they've been used to? How are they going to handle not being maybe as big of a part of or a focal point in the offense as they've been throughout their career? And based on what Jacob Tamme said there, it says, quote, I've never once seen Julio Jones complain about not having enough targets. That's really good news. I mean, that's good news for the Titans because, look, as good as he is and as good as I think he still can be, like I look at this offense right now, the way that things are run here in Tennessee, and with Derrick Henry in the backfield, A.J. Brown on the other side, like, to me, there's just no way that Julio Jones is going to get as many targets as he's probably used to getting. Like, I just don't really see a way that that's going to happen.
I can't see a way that he would think he would.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, he didn't choose here. He got traded here. But, I mean, he has to know what he's coming into. He knows how good A.J. Brown is. He knows that Derrick Henry is the focal point of the offense. And that is, I mean, that's a good little nugget of information on Tammy's 2 years with Julio, because that's something that people are going to wonder about, and it's natural, it's understandable. He said he just wants to win, and I know that everyone says that stuff, right?
Yep.
If someone signs a new player, it's all anybody cares about. But other than the contract aspect of it, that's different. But as far as the on-field aspect of it, am I getting enough catches, stats, this and stuff? I don't think that's going to be a big concern. I think the interesting thing is, what does he think about his deal? Will he want a new deal? Things like that. That's different, and obviously that has been contentious with him and his club. Again, can't blame anybody for trying to get what they should be getting in this league, because it ends quickly. But he also knows where he is in his career, and he can't be expecting 1,800-yard seasons, even if he wasn't on a stacked offense.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I've never watched Julio play in Atlanta and come away thinking, like, okay, that guy's a diva. Like, you watch, Antonio Brown. Like, you knew in Pittsburgh with some of the things going on with Antonio Brown, like, all right, that guy is really, really good, but he's also kind of a little bit of a diva as well. Like, I've never really gotten that vibe, and based on comments coming out of Atlanta, it doesn't really feel like anybody else that's played with him feels that way either about Julio Jones, which I think that's exactly what Mike Vrabel, John Robinson, and company are looking for when you're bringing in a big-name guy like this. Like, they're all about the team and, fitting into the identity that they've created here with the Titans, and I think they feel like Julio Jones fits in perfectly with that identity based on not only what we've seen from Julio in his career, but just comments made by John Robinson in his press conference the other day.
Yeah, everyone should be looking out for themselves when it comes to dealing with management and trying to stay in the league, get every last cent you can get fair market value. They're two totally different things. But then you're going to have a lot more success on the field if you got guys who actually are good teammates and are more concerned about the final result on the scoreboard than whatever they do individually. You can be one and absolutely, give management hell whenever you get a chance and, all that, and then you can still be the good teammate. And that's what it seems like with Julio Jones.
Let's go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Ben on the text line. Even with less targets, I could see Julio getting 1,300 yards on 65 catches. Well, if my math is right, that's 20 yards a catch. So that would be a heck of a number right there.
that'd be pretty good. I would not look for that. I would not expect that. Now, A.J. Brown is a rookie, I think, had 20,
it's close,
right?
Yeah.
But that was also, he didn't have a ton, especially early in the year, of targets. He took a few to the house, and you get a big number like that. I mean, Julio Jones' career average is 15.2, which is massive. In modern era, it's the best, yards per catch average with guys with enough, catches. If he's anywhere close to that, if he's 13-plus yards per catch, you're happy with that.
Jack from Nashville on the text line says he probably never complained about targets in Atlanta because he never had to. He was always the number one guy. And that is a good point. They did have Calvin Ridley coming up the last couple of years, but Julio Jones, when he was on the field, still the number one guy. Look, I mean, depending on what version of Julio Jones we see, I mean, he could still be the number one guy here, too. Like, if Julio Jones is Julio Jones from a year ago before he got hurt, like, to me, he's still a better player than A.J. Brown is at this point. It's close, but I don't think it's absolutely sure that he's not going to be the number one guy here.
Well, and look, on the point of him, overall, certainly he's been the focal point. But you can't tell me there wasn't a game here or there where, Julio got doubled and they just couldn't get him the ball and they went somewhere else, right? I mean, I'm sure, I'm 100% confident that has happened. So you still would have opportunities here and there even if you're Julio Jones in that offense, to have a down week of targets and things like that. I'm trying to look at like his targets per year. I mean, my gosh, he got targeted 200 times in 15. But for the most part,
I'm going to take the under on that this year.
Yeah. 150, 170, 148, 129. I mean, I think he'll be right around 100-ish.
Yeah.
Next year. I mean, it's look.
Got an extra game to work with,
One
too.
football. That's true. Extra game. One football. 3 guys that you really, really want to have the football.
How many targets is Anthony Ferkser going to get now? Cuts down on his significantly.
Well, yeah, but you know what? Guys like Ferkser and Reynolds, are they ever going to get some good situations? You know,
they are.
And that's when you have if you have a quarterback who's doing his job and seeing the field, you're going to get some big plays out of those guys too. You know, and a Darrington Evans maybe too.
When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on Julio Jones. Got some of your thoughts to get to on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Join Stars for their annual golf tournament, the Hart Golf Classic, on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club, powered by Enterprise. This event is more than just a day of golf. It's a young person's future. The tournament is a scramble format with an 8 a.m. shotgun start, breakfast, and lunch will be provided. So register today and support the hope, health, and connection of our young people. The Hart Golf Classic for Stars Nashville on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club. For more information, please visit starsnashville.org. That's starsnashville.org. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Streaming live on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch as well. We'll be joined to begin the 9 o'clock hour by our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, getting his thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans as well. So one thing that kept coming up both in this Monday morning quarterback piece by Albert Breer, I think it came up 3 or 4 times, the Titans doing some pretty good homework on Julio Jones when it comes to obviously the film study part of it and the way he fits into the offense and the type of player that they're getting, but also what sort of teammate are the Titans getting? What sort of person is Julio Jones going to be in the locker room? And we know we spent a lot of time talking about that with Isaiah Wilson. We spent a lot of time talking about that with Vic Beasley as well. What's his motor like? What's his motivation like coming into a new team and a new situation? I didn't really feel like that would be an issue with Julio Jones, and the Titans, to their credit, checked in on it anyway, apparently also including multiple times with Nick Saban as well. So Nick Saban providing a little homework for the Titans as well when it comes to Julio Jones.
Nick's like, who? Who is that
Who's
now?
that guy? Oh, he's one of those receivers I put in the league. That list is long.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, you're going back. You're going back on Julio in Tuscaloosa.
I did think about when they traded for Julio, like a 2010 home game for the Vols against Alabama, and Julio scored like 2 or 3 touchdowns in that game, and I'm sitting there in Neyland Stadium in the student section in the end zone, and on like his second or third touchdown, he comes running in there, and my little 18-year-old Tennessee self is just yelling at Julio Jones, and he's just looking back at me, nodding, smiling, flexing, running back to the sideline.
You didn't throw up any middles, did you?
I did not. That did not happen.
That's good. Well, that same year, I covered a Michigan State team that won the Big Ten, and they had to go to the Citrus Bowl. They tied with like Ohio State and Wisconsin, and that Alabama team lost to Cam, that was very banged up team.
Yep.
They had to play in the Citrus Bowl or whatever it's called now in Orlando. I remember early in that game, Julio just going down the sideline, and I don't remember what the final. It was like 49-3. By the third quarter of that game, I was like, they need to stop this game because the other teams get like the Michigan State's going to get like they're going to not be able to play next year. Insanely talented team that could have won it all, but Julio, my gosh, in that game. Of course, I also thought Trent Richardson at that time. I was like, that guy is going to be an absolute star in the NFL. You never know. They don't all become NFL stars.
It's true.
But that does remind you. I mean, you're going back. You're going back a few years with Julio. I mean, he certainly has put in the time. It's interesting. I mean, I think it's smart that they would do this. That they would. And I'm sure there were calls to a lot of other people too. But Saban, raises your eyebrows like, oh, talking to Nick Saban. Apparently, Robinson and Vrabel did. You got to look at this from every angle if you're the Titans. If you're gonna pull the trigger on something like this. But I honestly. I had not heard of anything over the years of like any sort of bad teammate stuff or selfish or whatever with Julio. It's the management issues that, again, people you got to compartmentalize these things and separate that out. Like I had some sympathy for the Falcons because they had just redone his deal and he wants another one just because other guys are doing it. But you know what? At that time, he could absolutely say, I am the number 1 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
So pay me like it. And the way guys get cut in this league and get moved and the careers end like a snap of a finger with so much of these contracts unpaid, I can't really blame them at all. And that is not the same as how you are in a locker room.
Our buddy Drew on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says Capital One Bowl, Bama 49, Sparty 7.
Oh, 49-7. Thank you. Yes, that's right. That's right. Capital One Bowl. Yeah, Kirk Cousins did not have a lot of answers for the Crimson Tide that day.
I would say not.
And then he got knocked out of the game. And I was like, you know what, Kirk? You should just
sit on down, son.
Just chill out, man. You'll be fine.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, I'm a big fantasy football guy, and statistically, Calvin Ridley would have astronomically better games when Julio was playing opposed to when he wasn't. I think he helps A.J. Brown a whole lot more than we think.
That's interesting. Certainly helps him in terms of – I mean, obviously, Yeah, right. It's
Sure.
just like now your defense is in a bind. Are they going two high safeties? What are they doing? You're going to double both of them. I mean, like you have to make some really tough choices. Now, statistically, sometimes I wouldn't always necessarily think that would play out, but that is interesting. I mean, fantasy. This is interesting from a fantasy perspective. Like, where are those three guys going next year in drafts?
Right.
Because I could understand the idea of, I don't know. There's one football. But I think they all could also have very good numbers next year.
I mean, it depends on your style, too, right? Like, if you're getting running backs, I mean, Derrick Henry's going pretty early.
Derrick Henry's going early because Derrick Henry, he's going to get touchdowns.
He's going to get touchdowns.
And this team should get a lot of those.
Yeah. Yes, they should.
But the Brown and Julio, how they slot in terms of overall at receiver, that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting now, like, Julio Jones every year would be taken before A.J. Brown normally if he's with the Falcons.
Without question.
What do you do now that they're on the same team? Like Corey Curvis said yesterday on the show, like, A.J. Brown, if you're a fantasy football player, his stock just went way up yesterday with the acquisition of Julio Jones.
Yeah, see that. But I don't know that. So let's take it. Let's say without Julio this year, to me, and certainly he's going to get way more attention without Julio. He's going to get way more coverage without Julio than he is with Julio. So I get that. But I also think the Titans, in an offense without Julio, with Derrick Henry, are still going to get the ball to A.J. Brown a lot, and he's still going to produce a lot. I mean, now you can make the argument that he's going to have more space and there's going to be more opportunities and it's going to be easier, but you're probably going to spread the ball around more, right? I don't know that I necessarily buy that this means like A.J. Brown has better stats. It just means that they're a better offense, a better team.
The interesting thing to me, and you brought this up yesterday, which I think is going to be really fascinating to see what they do, like how often do they move A.J. Brown around or Julio around? I mean, you've said it. Both of them, they can play in the slot. I mean, Josh Reynolds can play in the slot. I'd imagine you're going to see him a fair bit everywhere. But, like, how often is Julio playing in the slot? How often did they move A.J. Brown around to the slot? Because, I mean, obviously, at this point, they don't really care about having the true dedicated slot guy this year unless, something happens in training camp and they bring somebody else in that we're not thinking about. But I think that's pretty obvious at this point. They don't care about that, and they feel like the three receivers that they have, the three veteran guys that they have, you can move those guys around and they can play in the slot. Like, how often do you move AJ in the slot and see if he can do some work over the middle? Because we know how good he is with the ball in his hand after he gets it. I mean, that's not a bad idea there.
Yeah, for sure. And then even just the X and Z, like who's where. I mean, those guys have been both X's for the most part. I mean, it's a lot of interesting moving parts. It's a great. I mean, Todd Downing, that's got to be exciting for him. I mean, he's got to be loving all the possibilities that you can do here. And again, Darrington Evans, another piece that you add this year, if he's healthy, that I think can benefit from this as well. But yeah, I think you'll see both of those guys moved in there. All three of those guys moved around. I think you're going to see the Titans in 11 way more this year. That just would be my guess. In 11 as in three receivers, one back, one tight end. I mean, they've been a very heavy two tight end team, and it's been very effective.
Yep.
But I've got to assume that it's going to be a lot more of that now. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's going to be that. All that stuff is going to be. It's always interesting, but I swear, like this year, this is going to be like TD is like this every game. He's got his thing, like every play, and he runs the replay of it on his screen with like this little program he has. It was awesome. Like I might do that this year too, because it's just going to be so interesting to see how they deploy them and then how defenses react week to week.
Listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9, at noon, and at 3 o'clock. And when you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Titans offense. How do we think Josh Reynolds feels about the acquisition of Julio Jones? We'll get into that coming up next. Charles Robinson dropping by at 9 o'clock as well. All that ahead here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Port there with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to be joined by our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports at 9 o'clock. That coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Right now, let's revisit our poll question of the day at 102.5 The Game on Twitter. Following the Titans acquisition of Julio Jones, do you believe that they can beat Kansas City in a playoff game? 345 votes are in. 65% say yes. 35% say no. So the yeses still have it, Joe Rexrode. It's gone down. At one point, it was 72% yes. Now it's at 65% say yes, the Titans can beat Kansas City.
You're not hopeless homers. I mean, they can beat Kansas City. You're right. The 65% is right. I mean, it's not impossible to beat Kansas City.
No.
Saying that they can beat Kansas City does not mean that you are saying they will beat Kansas City. Or maybe you are. If you are, then you are.
Some people in that poll are saying yes.
If you're saying yes for sure, they're better than Kansas City, they will beat them, okay, you are a hopeless homer. But if you're just saying they can beat them, you're not.
So, Joe, we've talked about Julio Jones, his role coming in with the Titans, but one guy also coming in as a new part of this offense is Josh Reynolds. Now, it's a very team-friendly deal for Josh Reynolds coming in for 1 year. We know what he's done with the Rams. I feel like he's a good player, and we talked about it before the Titans brought in Julio Jones. Maybe Josh Reynolds could be a guy that comes in and gives you close to what we saw last year from Corey Davis. And if that was the case, I think you would love that if you're a Titans fan. Now, obviously, with Julio coming in, his role is going to change. And I kind of felt like the Titans had to have something in mind the whole time. Like, to me, Josh Reynolds is not a number 2 wide receiver. So I think he slots in pretty nicely as a number 3 guy. Last year, 52 catches, 618 yards, 2 touchdowns in 16 games with the Rams. And we've talked about this as well. I mean, a guy that you feel good about from a durability standpoint, he has played in every single game so far in his career. He has not missed a game yet to this point in terms of injury. But I guess if you're Josh Reynolds, you could view this a couple of different ways. You're excited to have Julio Jones come in. You're excited about what that could do for the team and your chances to compete for a Super Bowl. That also means that there are going to be fewer balls thrown your way if you're Josh Reynolds. How do we think Josh Reynolds is feeling today about his role in this offense? And what do you think this means for Josh Reynolds with Julio Jones coming into the mix now on the other side of A.J. Brown?
Well, I think if you're Josh Reynolds, you're the 3 for a good offense. And, of course, you're behind, Cooper Kupp and name eluding me, Brandon. Why am I struggling with this?
Brandon Cooks.
Thank you, Brandon Cooks, who are both good receivers.
Very good.
Now it's A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. It's a little bit of a difference.
Did you mention Robert Woods?
Yeah, Robert Woods too.
Yeah, man.
So I guess he was number 4.
Was he? Would you consider him the 4 there?
Yeah.
Oh, Woods is absolutely above Reynolds.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to look up the Rams stats in 2020. This was an opportunity, right? Like you moved on. So, this is an opportunity you probably looked at to be the 2, although you also knew that the Titans weren't, whether they were going to do some sort of acquisition of a veteran, you probably figured they would draft someone high.
Yes.
I mean, if you're Reynolds and his agent, you're looking at the situation. It's a good situation, but you know that they're not necessarily done at the position. To me, I mean, look, you've got to love the opportunities you're going to have and the situations you're going to be in this year. Are you going to get the ball less this year? Probably. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say so. But I think you're also going to have a chance to make big plays and still be involved. I mean, look, frankly, between Brown and Jones, the way they play, the way they dish out punishment, the way they take it, the way they play through nagging injuries, yeah, you certainly could have a few weeks if you're Josh Reynolds as the 2 next season too. I still think this is a good situation for him. It's probably a little different though. I mean, it certainly changes the dynamic of the offense from what you signed up for.
There's a point here that a texter just brought up on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. That's a good one that we've not gotten to yet when it comes to Josh Reynolds, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown in this discussion. And the texter says the average size of the Titans' top 3 wide receivers is 6'2", 215, all highly skilled. Good luck with that. So it's pretty obvious. Like we talked about last year, you get in the receiving room, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Corey Davis. Adam Humphries kind of a smaller guy. Khalif Raymond kind of a smaller guy. Cam Batson kind of a smaller guy as well. You look at the top 3 right now for this Titans wide receiving core. A.J. Brown is 6 foot, 225 pounds. Julio Jones, 6'3". Josh Reynolds, 6'3". They're going with kind of a bigger lineup at wide receiver, and I think that's very intentional, first off, from John Robinson and the Titans. But you talk about maybe throwing up some of these 50-50 balls, going and getting, in single coverage on the outside, and Tannehill just kind of lofting it up there, letting his receivers go win those battles. I think we could see more of that this year with the height out there. Obviously, the explosiveness as well from A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But that is a good point to point out there from the texter. Lots of size in this top 3 when it comes to the receiving core for the Titans.
Yeah, no doubt. You might need a change of pace. Darrington Evans out there. There's no more Adam Humphries. By the way, I guess we're all wrong. So, yeah, Cooks moved on to the Texans last year. I knew that. So I had Cooks and Robert Woods mixed up. So he's the clear 3 behind Woods and Kupp. Woods had 90 for 936. Kupp had 92 for 974. I hope neither of those guys had a 1,000-yard incentive bonus in their contract. What were you going to say?
But in 2019, all 4 of them were on the same roster, and Reynolds was a distant 4th in targets.
Gotcha. Yeah. So those are good receivers. I think he's a guy who it's interesting. If you had Josh Reynolds, from what I've seen of him, and by the way, before they ever signed him, I said they should sign him. I'd like to point that out. You did. But from what I've seen of him, I think he's got the ability to be higher on a depth chart for a lot of NFL teams. So so that's the thing. If you're him, okay, got a chance to be the 2. You saw what Corey Davis did with those other 2 guys and with Tannehill as your quarterback as the 2, right? You love that possibility. And now, Julio Jones and A.J. Brown are going to get the ball a lot. But it's going to be interesting. I do think the Titans are going to be more balanced. I think they're going to throw more this year. But how many opportunities is Josh Reynolds going to get? I don't know. Ferkser. I think that when they do get opportunities, they're going to have great matchups. And Tannehill has great chemistry with Ferkser. He spread it around to Humphries, Raymond, whoever was out there. So I still feel like it could be a good year for Josh Reynolds, but the numbers are going to be down.
Well, and it's a contract year too. I mean, he's on a 1-year deal at $1.75 million. I mean, he's costing you next to nothing coming in here, and he's your number 3 wide receiver. So I mean, it's a great deal for the Titans. It also, I think, from Josh Reynolds' point of view, when he signed the deal, was that all right? I'm signing this deal. I'm getting a bigger role. And I'm going to really make my money the next time the contract rolls around. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, all it takes is one injury, and all of a sudden Josh Reynolds is right back up there in your top 2. But I don't know if the targets are going to be quite where Josh Reynolds maybe thought they would be heading into the season with Julio Jones.
Right. I mean, it's exactly what it was. A 1-year prove-it deal. The cap's down. This is a good time to do that. Be the 2 in a really good offense. Take a big jump in production. Be more attractive. But you know what? If he gets – so the last 3 – he got 81 targets last year. That was by far the most he had. Interesting because, last year he had the most targets by far. He had 52 catches, 618. He averaged 11.9. The year before, half the targets, but he averaged 15.5 per catch. He was more of a big play guy.
Yep.
To me, if he gets, 50 targets this year and does something good with them, he still is going to be – he's still going to make himself attractive on the open market. People are going to understand the situation, right? I mean, any other GM looking at this understands, look, you can't get that guy the ball that much when you have the big 3 in front of him.
Let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris texting in. Joe, are you the founder and president of the Darrington Evans fan club? I've been in the car for 10 minutes, and you've bromanced him 3 times at least.
Bromanced him? I'm just saying, and really I thought that this was one of the answers before they got Julio Jones, Like, that guy's got to become a bigger part of this. It's less urgent now, but I still think he's interesting.
Well, and doesn't it kind of feel like that's what they're doing? Like, they want him on the field at the same time as Derrick Henry. I mean, like, I don't read too much into OTAs because they're OTAs.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're spending your entire time working at wide receiver when you're a running back at OTAs, like, I do think that says, hey, we got to get you catching some passes here, and you have to be more involved this year in the passing game. Like, I don't think having him out there as quote unquote your slot guy at times, or your H-back, whatever you want to call him, I think that's absolutely going to be a part of what they try to do with him this year.
I think he's really talented. I do. And, this is a guy on a rookie deal who basically had his rookie year washed away, but you saw it a little bit at the very end last year. So, yeah, I think it's another chess piece for Todd Downing to have that really Arthur Smith didn't last year. And I think they are going to do some different things with him and make things tougher on defenses. You can see how it could be a real problem, not just with the big three, but they do have some support pieces that are nice.
ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball. Tonight, the Sounds open a 6-game homestand at First Horizon Park against the Indianapolis Indians, the AAA affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pre-game show with Jeff Himm starts at 6:50. First pitch is at 7:05. Nashville Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and 312 Pizza Company. When we come back, we'll be joined by our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. We'll get into the Julio Jones trade with him. What does this do for the Titans and the pecking order in the AFC? All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the wholesaling studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, reacting to Julio Jones being traded to the Tennessee Titans. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And as we do every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, let's go to our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com and welcome in the great Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing well. Aaron Rodgers amping up.
Aaron Rodgers is amping up. We'll get to that coming up here in just a few minutes. Charles, though want to get your reaction to Julio Jones to the Titans. What does that do for the Titans in the big picture of the AFC? What was your reaction when you saw that deal was complete and that Julio Jones would be the newest member of the Tennessee Titans?
Well, first of all, I mean, the compensation, I thought, Tennessee did a good job because, they didn't go over market for him, to send a second and a fourth, to me it was a good investment, given where his age is at, what the window likely is. But the realities of who he is as a player, I mean, this is somebody that I think you sit there and you go, he can still be a number one wide receiver for the Titans, and he can be a player that, as the years move forward, depending how long this commitment really is, he can be essentially parlayed into being a number two receiver, and it makes a lot of sense for how this should unfold the next couple of years. But beyond that, I mean, we talked about it last week. I mean, you have a couple of players who are absolutely dominant, at their position. I still think Julio Jones qualifies as a dominant number one receiver in the league. Derrick Henry qualifies as the most dominant running back in the league. Two complete, ridiculous physical mismatches. And then, where AJ is at this point in his career, I mean, I think he's ascending to the point where he's a number one receiver. So, I would say that they've put themselves in position to compete offensively, with the Chiefs. And that's the measure. That's what you're trying to do. If you're in the AFC, you're sitting there and you're going, look, if we have to outgun the Chiefs, we have to have the offensive pieces to do it. We have to have the mismatches to do it. And I think this is a trade that, at least in 2021, and really I think that's what this deal is about right now. It's about 2021. They put themselves in position to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs offensively.
So why do you think, not the first-round pick things, I think that was always a fantasy for the Falcons, but why do you think there weren't more teams willing to offer up something similar? I mean, I look at the Colts. And right now, I just, like, if I'm a Colts fan, I don't love this, of course, seeing Julio Jones with the Titans. And I also see Chris Ballard has space, and he's got a need at receiver. Like, why weren't more teams in on this?
Well, let's see what happens with his money, okay? Like, let's see what happens with the contract. If I'll put it to you this way, if he plays for the Titans under the contract that was traded to the Titans, then it was a mistake by other teams, frankly. I think other teams made a big error in judgment. But I also think that the Falcons hurt themselves by trotting out an asking price initially that was too high. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't know. I think we spoke about it last week where I told you, look, I talked to a team that was interested, that kicked tires on Julio Jones. Look, the Chiefs kicked tires on Julio Jones. But the initial – and, again, this was also something that didn't all of a sudden just happen in the last week, okay? This stretches back to way before the draft. Once Terry Fontenot had the job in Atlanta as the general manager, and, look, the head coach is in place, the owner knew this was going to happen. These were talks that happened stretching beyond the draft, and that initial asking price was very, very high. And I told you last week, there was a team that was really interested in the NFC that it was a first round pick, and then they added a couple players, and they were they wanted this team to flip, and the team was just like, this is a joke, like, it's a ridiculous ask. And so and they pulled. They were like, we're not even going to be involved in this. This is where this is going. That's way too high. And so, and again, I think they thought Julio was going to have a new deal on the other end of this. Now, if this all unfolds and the Titans don't have to sign Julio to a new deal, if they don't have to commit, $20 million a season to him the next couple of years, again, I think it's a mistake. I think there are other teams that had, small Super Bowl windows that could have made this commitment. I think the Chiefs are a team that could have made this commitment and figured out a way to make it work. And, I was thinking about the Chiefs kicking tires on this. All the Chiefs would have had to do is extend Turron Matthew, which, I think they're going to spend post-mandatory minicamp. They're going to spend some time trying to figure out if they can get that extension done. They could have made this deal work very easily for themselves in 2021, and I don't know if anybody could have touched the Chiefs at that point. So it was, like I said, it was a mistake, I think, by the Ravens. I think it was a mistake by the Chiefs. I think it was a mistake by the Rams. There were a number of teams that I think really could have used this opportunity to sweeten their Super Bowl odds, and now there's no question the Titans did that for 2021. And I keep saying 2021 because I want to see, again, what happens with the money, and we'll see how far this commitment goes. Because to me, this commitment right now is for 2021 and probably 2022, and we'll see where it goes after that.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And, Charles, you brought it up. Aaron Rodgers not expected to be on the field for mandatory minicamp today for the Packers.
He's not there.
He's not there.
He's not there. He's definitely not there. He did not show up. He's not on the field. They're on the practice field right now, and he is not there.
So he is not there, subject to, I think, somewhere around $93,000 worth of fines if he does not show up for the entire 3-day camp. Where do things stand right now between the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and where do you see it going from here now that mandatory minicamp is underway?
Well, so now things are getting serious because here's the escalation in this. And there's the obvious point of, okay, well, this is the first mandatory thing that he skipped. But the reality is they had 3 phases of off-season workouts that he didn't show up for. Well, he didn't trigger a $500,000 workout bonus this off-season by not showing up for those 3 phases of workouts. That has definitely been an underplayed part of this story. So, and there's no way for the Packers to find some workaround for that unless, they're like, hey, we'll figure out a way to put the 500 G's in a new contract or whatever and get that money to him. So Rodgers has already said, all right, well, I don't care about $500,000. They could potentially fine him, $93,085. Do I think they're going to fine him that? I think they'll get cute about this, and as a sort of way to show him, like, hey, we're really trying to get this. We're not going to fine. Like, that's fine. You're going to miss mandatory minicamps. We're going to just say it's an excused absence, and we're going to, we're not going to fine you for this. I think that's part of what they will offer coming out of this. I'm sure that they will say, we're going to find a way to give you a ton of money, so you're not going to have to worry about the 500 G's you already lost. But I think, and this is actually what I'm not writing today, is if you're the Packers, now you actually have to sit there and contemplate if he's willing to lose 600 G's, if he's willing to not show up for mandatory minicamps, which is going to resonate in our fan base. The truth is, maybe this guy is willing to not show up in training camp. And that is when you are hitting the panic button with a sledgehammer. So if you're the Packers, you have to hope Jordan Love looks exquisite the next couple of days, because to me, that's how you put pressure back on Aaron Rodgers, is you go, hey, remember what you did to Brett Favre? This dude's about to do this to you. So, Jordan Love has to go out there and not throw checkdowns. He has to go out there and all the top shelf receivers there, everybody's showing up. He's got to throw downfield. He has to throw with accuracy. He has to show that, the struggles that he had last year, I'm telling you, despite what's been reported, he struggled last year, like a lot. He has to show that the coaching staff should have confidence in him, and that's the way the team puts, pressure back on Aaron Rodgers. But I think Aaron Rodgers has shown now, hey, you know what? Just because you think the fans, are going to turn against me and, financially, whatever you want to put out there, I'm not showing. It's a different type of escalation.
Boy, if it's on Jordan Love, that's sounds like a little bit of a Hail Mary. But hey,
bro, I'm just telling you. And the thing is, too, like the limited, so in OTAs, reporters only saw like a limited amount of Jordan Love, right? Well, what they did, I mean, you know, you go and you look at the reporting, they were documenting like this guy's checking down a lot. Like this guy, he is not throwing the ball down the field. And again, remember the top end, like Devontae Adams, like the top end receivers for the Packers weren't there at that time. So that could change things, you know, when, hey, you got elite level guys who are getting open, you throw downfield. But the worry with Jordan Love last year was, you know, like he wasn't throwing with accuracy particularly downfield. It was about Jordan Love's ability to throw and just be consistent and accurate. And that didn't happen last year. I don't care what anybody's reported. I'm telling you right now, if the coaching staff was being honest, they're sitting there and going, okay, Aaron Rodgers he's going to extend us here. Like we're going to be a coaching staff here coaching Aaron Rodgers for the next, 3-4 years, however long he wants to play. Jordan Love, I don't know. Like we may go 5-12 with Jordan Love as starter, and we don't get fired after a year of this mess, and everything caves in around us. So this is a very, very important moment for Jordan Love in his career. If he goes out and lights it up the next couple of days, the narrative of this changes a little bit for the Packers and gives them the leeway to A, put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, or B, if they really truly believe, hey, this dude just took a huge stride over next year, maybe we could start the Jordan Love era now. Like maybe he can, do what Aaron Rodgers did to Brett Favre. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's a wild improbability, but we'll see. The next 2 days are going to be interesting.
So, Charles, right now, with all the information you have available, give me your top 5 teams in the AFC in 2021.
Oh, boy. Top 5 teams in the AFC in 2021. All right, okay. I'm going to put the Chiefs at 1 because I still think the totality of where the Chiefs are at and not knowing, like let's see what happens with Bud Dupree. I banged on John Robinson last week when I talked to you guys because I said, hey, look, it's been some, there's been some rough off seasons. Like I want to see the proof now that, some of these moves can work. So I'm still, in that mode. So I still got to put Kansas City at 1. Tennessee, I think with the Julio acquisition, and obviously the moves that were made defensively in the offseason, I feel pretty comfortable putting Tennessee at 2. And it's obviously Buffalo. It's a toss-up, between Buffalo and Tennessee because Buffalo took a huge step forward last offseason. I think they've got, if Josh Allen does what he did between 2019 and 2020, if he takes that kind of step this year, Buffalo is going to be a very, very difficult team to beat, maybe even more difficult than the 13-3 team they trotted out last year. But I like this acquisition enough to give Tennessee the tip over Buffalo. So I put Buffalo at 3. Man, once you get past 3, it's Indianapolis is with Carson Wentz. I just don't know. I don't know what Indianapolis and Carson Wentz, what exactly that's going to look like. I don't know what Tua in Miami is going to look like. At 4, on paper, Cleveland's pretty good. At 4, they've had Cleveland's last 2 off seasons probably as good as almost anybody has had in the AFC when you combine the 2 years. So I might put Cleveland at 4. I think Baltimore at 5. And I got to believe that Frank Reich and Carson Wentz, there was the people in Philadelphia believe that Frank Reich he was sort of the Carson whisperer because Carson Wentz quietly is a far more hard-headed guy than people realize. He's pretty stubborn, and he's had some problems with coaching. Doug Peterson had problems coaching him. And Frank Reich, I think, was a guy who really was able to draw out the best in Carson Wentz. So I got to believe he's going to be able to do a little bit of that in Indianapolis. So I'd probably put Indianapolis trailing the rest. But, so I guess that's actually what I give you 6. I can't count.
There you go.
No, that's fine. We'll take 6. Yeah, we'll take 6. So you're counting the Clowney acquisition as part of a great offseason for the Browns, though. I just want to make sure that I have that on the record.
Yeah, look, for commitment, I mean, for what they've committed to him, it's very little, but I think the totality of the draft for Baltimore was great. I think the Tack McKinley, they added, beyond Clowney, they added a number of guys, and at almost every level, whether that was 1-year contracts. I mean, look, the John Johnson addition at safety, like this was a guy 2 years ago when I talked to the Rams, they were like, man, we're going to have to tag that guy. Like if we can't get a deal done, he's going to be a franchise tag safety. They add 2 pieces from the Rams who were top level, secondary pieces. They added pieces along the defensive line. The draft, they get Koromoa in the second round, which is a guy that they considered in the first round. I know he's a little bit of a tweener of a linebacker out of Notre Dame, but I just think overall, Cleveland's done quite a bit. And remember, Odell Beckham didn't play last season. He had the knee injury, so he missed a lot of last season. I still think, look, he's a quality player. It's just, how much does he buy into the program? And I still think he can be a better player for them than he has been in totality. So you're trying to listen. You're trying to pin everything all on the Clowney acquisition. You know what, Rexrode, you can suck it. All right, like come on. That's
Charles loves Clowney.
They said Clowney. Like, this is the best offseason ever.
Rexrode's just tired of people giving him shade on our text line about Clowney, so he just threw it all on you.
And by the way, you guys can roll it back. I don't think I was like effusive in the Jadeveon Clowney praise at any point.
You were
in the
not.
Past. I think I was not. So
I'm just that's the look. I know some Browns fans very excited about the Clowney aspect. So we'll see.
Hey, everybody's just you guy keeps moving around. Everybody eventually is going to be at some point. He's going to go through all 32 teams, and every fan base is going to figure out that it's not.
Yeah,
still a good.
He's not still the number one recruit in the country.
Hey, it's for the finances. The thing is with the Browns, like, there's no illusion here. It's like, hey man, this is pretty much it for you. Like, if you do not put it together now, then you're just going to be a mediocre player bouncing around with teams, and you're never gonna. There's no going back to what you were in Houston. I think like if he can't do it now in Cleveland, I don't think he ever goes back and realizes what he once was with the Houston Texans for whatever the reason is, whether it's injuries or commitment.
I actually do. In all seriousness, I actually think he's going to be pretty good this year. But hey,
yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's what. Seattle, it's going to turn on. The light's going to turn on in Seattle. Oh, Tennessee, the light's going to turn on. Now Cleveland. Like, I think it shows how far the Browns have come. That all of a sudden we're like, oh, he's really good. Now he's with the Browns.
Yeah. That's right.
This says a lot about the Browns, man.
Robby and Rexrode joins us every week at 9:00. Charles, great stuff, man. Appreciate you taking time to join us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Absolutely. We'll react a little bit to what Charles had to say when we come back. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. This Father's Day, ESPN 102.5 The Game is saluting frontline fathers. Submit written descriptions of fathers who are serving on the front lines, including in the military, hospital workers, firefighters, or police. This week of June 14th, 102.5 The Game will air those submissions via call-ins, text messages, our website, and on social media as well. Visit thegamenashville.com now for more information. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. At Dynasty Dynamite on Periscope says Jordan Love equals a trash can with arms. Talking about what could be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers this year.
Wow. How dare you talk about Robbie starting quarterback like that.
Thank you.
That's actually the Cincinnati Reds bullpen, but I'll leave it at that.
Wow. Jeez. Porth coming immediately back in off the top rope today.
Multiple trash cans with arms?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
While he wears his Reds hat. All right. Go team.
Thought you just said they beat the Cards.
So what do you think about that? Charles Robinson has the Titans at number 2 in the AFC behind the Kansas City Chiefs. We've kind of seen it all over the map with people about what this Julio Jones acquisition means for the Titans. Number one, what do you think of him saying that the Titans are number 2 behind the Chiefs? And what do you think of what he threw out there about the Chiefs poking around at Julio Jones and seeing whether or not they could make that work?
I mean,
can you imagine?
Just don't even play the season. Just don't even play.
And he's saying it was a mistake that they didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
Well,
it could be.
I mean, if they win it all, then it wasn't. But, like, if they don't win it all and the Titans do win it all, then it's a mistake. You blew it, Chiefs. Yeah, that should almost be, like, not allowed. But the league would have to step in and be like, nah, man, you guys can't have Julio Jones too.
Be like a fantasy trade where all the other GMs can veto against it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
You imagine Julio Jones with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes.
Right, but again, so we're talking about that, whenever you think about it in terms of other teams, you're like, oh, my gosh. That's how other teams look at the Titans right now, Yeah. Which is why, again,
except that other team, well, if you're in NFL circles, you do. You know how good Tannehill's been. But nobody reacts to, oh, it's Tannehill, like Patrick Mahomes, obviously.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Right. There's definitely some people on there like, why would you go there? Ryan Tannehill?
Yeah.
Also, I don't watch the NFL ever. See, next year, I think the Titans will be more watched by people just in general around the NFL than ever.
Yeah, I would agree.
Actually, Jared did bring up a good point on this. Like, they should already be looking to move that Kansas City Titans game off noon.
When's that, week 7?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like, get
that a primetime game.
I think Sunday Night Football, I looked at this yesterday when he was talking about that. I think Sunday Night Football that week is Colts at Niners.
Give me Chiefs Titans.
Well, they're not going to change that, right? I mean, they're not going to. No. If you have a scheduled game, they're not going to do that. Now, when they have flex stuff later, they can, but they're not.
Is that not in the flex window?
Week 7?
They've been pushing it up each passing year. The 325 games were not impressive, though. Yeah, I do remember saying that.
I'd love to know, if timing was different, what would the Titans' total primetime inventory look like? I bet you they'd have 1 or 2 more.
I would say so.
But, hey, let's all watch the Cowboys.
Yeah, let's please do.
No, but that's a terrifying thought, like the Chiefs with Julio Jones.
I know. But now the Titans have him, and Charles has got him at number 2, right behind the Chiefs.
And look, I think that's around where the general expectations will be. I mean, certainly they're in that next group. I'm with anybody. I'd be surprised if anybody would pick anyone but the Chiefs right now to win the AFC. I mean, it's Mahomes, man, and those weapons.
Will.
Yeah, but I think you definitely have a case for the Titans over the Bills now.
So the 325 CBS games in Week 7. By the way, Week 7, my birthday, October 24th.
There you go.
Throwing that in there.
Happy early birthday.
Texans at Cardinals. So
yeah,
J.J. Watt, Hopkins,
yep.
And Tampa Bay versus Chicago.
Okay.
Fields, Brady.
If I was CBS, I would swap Bears, Bucks, and Chiefs, Titans. Put Nance and Romo here in Nashville.
Yep.
I agree.
They can. I mean, now that's something that can be Yeah, they can move those things around relatively soon, right? Like into a season even. Can't they? They've done that. Yeah, they'll do that.
So how many primetime games do the Titans have? 3, right? So they've got the game against the Bills in Week 6 on Monday Night Football. You've got the game against the Rams on Sunday Night Football in Week 9. And then the Thursday night game, which thank God is not against Jacksonville. This year it's against San Francisco in Week 16, Thursday Night Football. So 3 primetime games. So if this schedule comes out after the Titans have Julio, how many do we think they have? 1 more? 2 more? I mean, 5's a lot at that point.
5's a lot. I'd certainly 1 more. I mean, I'd like that Chiefs game.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh. Already should have been, but that's got potential for some serious fireworks. Yeah, 1 or 2 more. And, maybe that pays off next year. I mean, as the defending Super Bowl champ, you would think that they would get more. They'd get more.
Open
TV
the season,
looks,
you'll
right?
get one then. Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens on that front. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Titans. Do we feel like the Titans have what it takes to take down the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
The Tennessee Titans right now, because of this trade, with all due respect to Indianapolis, they are your clubhouse leaders to win this division. It's theirs to lose. They've got to get better on defense. That was part of their problem last year. They couldn't generate a pass rush. That was part of their problem last year. They got to work on that. But who in the hell is going to be able to cover both A.J. Brown and Julio Jones outside and then be prepared for the bowling ball that is number 22 coming downhill off of a 2,000-yard season.
That was Rich Eisen on the Titans being the favorites in the AFC South, saying who in the world is going to cover A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and then be ready to tackle Derrick Henry? That's a fair question, I think, to ask a lot of defensive coordinators as they head into this season for the Titans. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. So the question becomes, if you and I both feel like the Titans are the favorite in the AFC South, which we do, with Julio Jones back in here, can they take down the big dogs? Can they take down the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game if it comes down to that? With the Chiefs obviously still being the favorite in the AFC, with Patrick Mahomes still at the helm, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances for the Chiefs. Can the Titans take them down? The poll question of the day at 102.5 The Game on Twitter. Do you believe that the Titans can beat Kansas City in a playoff game? 66% say yes, 34% say no. Joe Rexrode, what do you say to that question? Can the Titans beat the Chiefs? And as you look at the team as currently constructed, how well prepared, how well constructed do you think they are to hang with the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC?
I don't care if their defense, everything breaks right. Let's say it all breaks right. Bud Dupree is a monster. Danique Autry and Simmons are great. Farley's healthy, and he's a really good corner. Molden comes in. Brown's a good playmaker back out there. Evans and Byard, bounce back, all that stuff. The Chiefs could still put 40 on that defense. Even if all that stuff is great. Now, you might get another couple stops that make the difference, but you're going to have to, in 9 out of 10 games, right, or whatever, we're going to do the 10-game thing like Heidi said.
Sure.
You're going to have to score a ton of points to beat them most times out. So that's what this does. It gives you a chance to play any way you want, and you should be just really, really hard to deal with on offense if you have all three of those skill guys on the field. So I think it absolutely improves those chances, and I will be more definitive than earlier in the show. I will go from – I would have given them 2 out of 10 to beat Kansas City. I don't think that even before this.
Yeah.
2 out of 10. I mean, that's still 80-20. Chiefs are going to win. I'm going to go up to 3. So it's only a 1-game bump. But, 70-30. I mean, that's about right. If I did percentages, I'd probably do about what the poll is, about 65-35.
Okay.
But you can't do that.
3.5 games.
You can't do that, so I'll stick with 3. I'll round down to 3. The Titans beat the Chiefs 3 out of 10 times.
So, Ryan Porth, how would you answer this question as you look at Julio Jones coming into the fold with the Titans, the offense that could be there for the Titans if everything breaks right? Obviously, still a ton of questions defensively that really we just won't know how that plays out until they set foot on the field. How close do you think the Titans are to being right there with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, the question is for a playoff game. And for one game, as heavily favored as the Chiefs may be really against anybody, anything can happen in that one game. As proven in the game against Cleveland where Mahomes went down and Chad Henne had to bail them out on a fourth down play.
Big time play by Chad Henne.
I would give them a fair chance of beating them in the playoffs. I would give them a better chance in 2021 than I would have going into the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. And a lot of that hinges, in my mind, on how Bud Dupree, how impactful he is as now their lead dog at pass rush. If Dupree and Landry are a great 1-2 combo, then I think you will generate more pressure on Mahomes and probably give yourself a better chance at that point to at least slay the dragon than you realistically had 2 years ago.
Well, and I'll throw Autry and Simmons in there too, because a big part of what we saw against Tampa Bay, and I realized that the offensive line was just in horrendous shape against Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay's front is incredible. But a big part of what we saw was not only Shaq Barrett coming off the edge, but up the middle. I mean, Tampa Bay just got a push, and that made life difficult on Mahomes. I mean, if Simmons and Autry can be that force up the middle, that's a big part of this too. When you start talking about your pass rush, like to me, I know Jeffrey Simmons has largely been very good since he got here. I still think there's another level that he's going to have to get to from a pass rushing standpoint if this team defensively can be what we think they can be. Like a lot of that is going to be on Jeffrey Simmons, and I think having Autry next to him will help. I think having Bud Dupree on the edge will help. But this is a big year for Jeffrey Simmons to take another step, not only being, a big-time playmaker. He made some huge plays for this defense last year with some deflected passes, fumble recoveries, making some big tackles on the goal line. All that's great. I still think there's another level that he's going to need to get to from a pass rushing standpoint. And I think he's got the opportunity to do that with Bud Dupree on the edge and with Danico Autry next to him.
Yeah, look, the defense could take a pretty big step. Now, it's got a long way to go. Like, there's a lot of room for growth with the defense, but they could take a big step. And you're going to have to. You're going to have to get some stops to beat Kansas City. Like, they don't score a touchdown on every possession. They may have scored a touchdown on every possession against that Titans defense in the playoffs last year.
They might have.
That's of course a big part of it. But some of the reaction to the Julio Jones edition has been like, great, what about the defense? Well, I don't know, but I do know that there are a lot of moves. There are, 6 different players who will be starting who weren't last year, I believe, if my math is correct on that.
It's over half the defense.
Who's back? So who's back who will start, who started last year? Jeffrey Simmons.
Harold Landry.
You count, Landry, and you count Evans and Brown, so there's 4, and Byard, right?
That's it.
Yeah. So the math was right. It's a very different defense, a very much better defense. I can't imagine it won't be somewhat better. That would be
It can't get a whole lot worse.
In some ways.
Right.
In a key way in this league. You can't stop people on third down. You are going to have a hard time. And they went 11-5 and won the division. But I think some improvement is almost guaranteed, almost a sure thing. Enough improvement? I don't know. A lot of questions there. I agree with when David Beauclair was on earlier. I think you could definitely see a thing with this defense where the first month of the season could be some messy Sundays.
That'll be a fun time for Shane Bowen when that happens.
Well, you get to start right out with, the Cardinals. That's a nice, easy first assignment. You're getting a brand new secondary going. You don't know, is it realistic to expect Bud Dupree to be full blast right away? Caleb Farley's going to be ready, all that stuff. But, a month in, if you don't have other injuries or things aren't longer timeline than you hope, then maybe you can really take steps within the season.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Heidi from Dixon texting in. Assuming both teams have the same level of health, the Chiefs near their performance ceiling win every time. The Titans have to play to their ceiling, and the Chiefs have to have a partially rough game as well.
Yeah, look.
Which that does happen.
Well, there's tons of I still think, your Packers. Out of 10 times, the Packers and the Bucks last year playing, who wins how many?
I think it's about 5-5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I could make the argument that maybe it'd be Packers 6 or 7 of the 10. Maybe not. But, of course, this happens all the time in the NFL. The one-game thing, upsets happen. The Saints at home against the Rams a couple years ago. I think they win that game 7, 8 times out of 10, but they didn't. So much wilder, less probable things have happened than this Titans team beating this Chiefs team in one game.
When we come back, we'll continue to take your thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans. What would you say to the question of where do the Titans fit into the mold of contenders in the AFC? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Right now, though, got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here, and you'll be in hoops heaven betting on all the action on FanDuel Sportsbook because there are so many exciting matchups, and FanDuel is taking that excitement to another level. New and existing users can bet risk-free throughout the playoffs, and new users get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. Once you have an account, you can bet one same-game parlay risk-free every single week. That means you can combine bets or multiple bets for an even bigger win. The money line, the point spread, the first basket scorer, rebounds, assists, everything is on the table. And if you don't win, you'll get up to $10 back. Basketball fans, now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot. Just sign up with promo code ROB to bet the NBA playoffs risk-free exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Risk-free bet for first online real money wager only, and refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Same game parlay refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. A max refund of $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile and web. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game, final segment of the day. You're streaming live on Periscope, YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on Julio Jones and this Titans offense. Let's go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Our friend Ben texting in, if Todd Downing isn't good at calling plays, or at least isn't as creative as Arthur Smith was, this three-headed monster could potentially never wake up. More play callers in NFL history have failed rather than succeeded. It is possible. You don't know until you see it with this group.
That's my number one, the pressure list. I know some
There's
people.
a lot of pressure on these coordinators this year. There really is.
Yeah, and there's you could say pressure on John Robinson making this deal. Not giving John Robinson a pass because he went for it, but I think going for it was the right move. May not work out. May end up costing him down the road, but I think he's done his job here. And if you are an offensive coordinator with these three guys and your offense takes a significant step back from what it was the year before, yeah, it's a bad reflection on you. So I agree. I mean, it's no sure thing. I'm trying to we've kind of gone through earlier in the show, different trios like this historically in the league now, things like that. I mean, I'm trying to come up with examples of an OC who just totally screwed up something this good, this potentially good. Yeah, I'm sure there's examples. I mean, some would say, well, Todd Downing had a lot of talent with the Raiders in 2017. I think there are a lot of issues with that team, including Carr's health. But you are right that Arthur Smith was definitely a key part of everything. It wasn't just the players on the field. He did a great job as OC, and that's big shoes to fill for Todd Downing.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, what do you guys think of adding Rashad Rodgers at tight end? He didn't play much with the Eagles last year, but had some success and could be affordable. I kind of get the feeling they're not adding anybody else at tight end. Like, just based on the comments, number one, the money situation they're in right now, and based on the comments made by John Robinson the other day, like it just kind of feels to me that this is the group they're rolling with at tight end. And, you know, Anthony Ferkser, Jeff Swaim going to get a lot of playing time. But I think what you brought up earlier could happen too. Like, we've seen a lot of 2 tight end sets out of this team. I would say the last couple of years, but really since they've been here in Nashville, we've seen a lot of 2 tight end sets out. I think we'll still see that at times, but maybe you see a little bit less of that this year with the personnel that they got in Julio Jones. I mean, Rashad Rodgers, maybe that's an option for the Titans, but I at this point, I don't really anticipate them making a move on the tight end front in free agency or trade.
Yeah, I've moved off another Eagles tight end.
You have. I think it's pretty safe to say, like, the Zach Ertz thing is not happening.
Yeah. I could still see potentially, I don't know exactly to the dollar how things are going to look, potentially a low-cost add, but that's the absolute max extent of it. So maybe they may be scouring for guys like that, and I don't think it's a bad idea if you can make it work, just to have someone else a little more seasoning, because – you're talking about Pinckney, who, was the Falcons let him go briefly there. You're talking about 2 undrafted free agent rookies right now as your depth behind Swaim and Ferkser. And even with those 2, you have some questions. So I think it's still something that John Robinson will explore, but it's got to be at the most a very low-cost veteran.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Josh texting in. Let's see how the Titans and Chiefs play on October 24th. Then we can talk about the playoffs. They do have an opportunity in Week 7 at home.
That's not the poll question.
That is not the poll question, Josh. We're talking about the playoffs.
Hey, listen, we have already fast-forwarded to the AFC Championship game, okay? I mean, that's on the schedule now. So, whatever happens in that first game. I mean, the Titans beat the Chiefs in the first meeting in 2019. Let's not forget that.
I'm expecting Julio in his first game against Arizona, 8 or 9 catches, 185 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, that's the bar.
Is that a called shot?
It's a called shot.
All right. Put it down for called shot.
It's not Friday.
That's all right. We can save it for Friday.
I mean,
is that all? That's all you expect out of him? 8 or 9, 185?
Just the first game.
Well, then what does AJ get?
10 catches, $170, 2 more touchdowns. Derrick Henry, 250 on the ground.
There you go. That's a piece of cake.
That'd be a record.
It would
between those 3.
Yes, it would be.
You know what would be amazing is if the Titans decided to introduce their defense before the home opener.
Oh, that would be awesome. And here.
Like, you'd actually have boos in the stadium. Like,
Rashaan Evans. Thank you. Let's go back to the text line. Ron texting in. I see at least 3 to 4 losses this year. Kansas City, Bills, Colts, and maybe the Rams. Well, look, if you had 3 or 4 losses, I think Titans fans will take that right now.
So 14-3 or 13-4.
Sign up for it right now.
Both of which sound stupid, by the way. Thanks, NFL.
FYI, the over-under for the Titans on FanDuel right now is 9.
9.
So FanDuel sees 8 losses.
Yeah,
3 or 4, that'd be pretty good. That would, I think, win the division going away. And probably, if you're 14-3, probably make you the 2 seed.
Wow, you got high expectations for Kansas City this year. 15-2, 16-1.
Are they going to lose?
17-0.
Maybe 18-0.
Yeah.
Well, they've talked about going 20-0 this year.
That's true. Mahomes did say that. Alex on the text line, would you bring back Luke Stocker for blocking depth? Also, what do you think could happen to Harold Landry next year with the cap?
I like Luke Stocker. I like Michael Pruitt.
Can bring back LaFleur, too. They can hand the ball to Luke Stocker.
Ooh.
Then we could really get a party going.
4th and goal at the 1.
Yeah.
Man.
Then have Lamar Miller go 97 the other way.
That's the first play I thought of when the Packers announced him as the head coach. I was like, oh, okay. Luke Stocker going to Green Bay, baby.
Did you also notice that night that Mariota completed like every pass he threw?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just in case you missed it.
Still didn't win.
They didn't win.
Did they win the game?
It wasn't on him.
Okay. All righty.
I'm just saying he wasn't the worst quarterback in the history of the NFL.
He wasn't. I mean, he's better than Alex Tanney. I'll give him that.
That's very nice of you. What were we talking about?
What do you think about Alex also says Harold Landry. What happens with him with the cap next year? Like a lot of that depends on what Harold Landry does this year.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So obviously Landry, second-round pick. So
does not get the fifth-year option.
So there's no option year. Yeah, this is a big year. And look, it's not a bad thing. And I think like with Clowney, I really do believe it's all about health. But like he is seeing that number go down. This is a big year for him to kind of either establish himself or be an also-ran after this year. So Landry, 4-year, $6.7 million deal. You know, I don't know. I think that he's a guy who, if he has a big season and benefits from Bud Dupree, he could be very attractive. But right now, at this point, I think he's probably making about what he should make, even in a second deal.
Yep.
That's not how it works. You go to the open market, and you're going to make probably more money. But it's a big year for him, for sure. And he's a guy who, good football player for the Titans. He's been fine. I think he's been a solid pick, a very good player, incredibly durable player. But you want to see more sacks.
Very quickly, we need final predictions on what number Julio Jones is going to wear for the Titans. Maybe we find out today. Maybe it's sometime in the next few days. Ryan Porth, we start with you. What number is Julio wearing for the Titans?
8. Book it.
All right.
Guaranteed.
The lock from Ryan Porth. Joe Rexrode, what number for Julio Jones?
Yeah, that'd be my guess too. I think it'd be cool if he came up with something different and had some cool reason for it, but I would have to guess. I mean, after what A.J. Brown did, how do you not
it's gotta be
honor
8, right?
that with number 8?
The legendary number 8 for the Titans gets passed on from Marcus Mariota to Julio Jones. It becomes official this week.
You're forgetting Matt Hasselbeck.
Matt Hasselbeck as well.
I mean, honestly,
My goodness.
In all seriousness, if you're the Titans, don't you really want him to pick something else?
Do you think there's a lot of people that still have their Marcus jerseys that are just holding on to them?
Yes.
Yes.
Ready to tape it over?
They were there last year.
They're not going to buy new ones?
They were all the people who were in the stadium last year. I bet you there were still like 30% of them had number 8 jerseys, man.
Get to 17, man. That's my advice. Go buy 17.
Yeah. But then they'll still keep the 8 and just put Julio's name on it.
I'm all for it.
You want them to buy all new stuff.
That does it for us today. Make sure you stay tuned to Darren Donick and Chase. Derek Mason coming up at noon on DDC to break down Julio Jones to the Titans. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode. We'll be back tomorrow. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game.